Welcome to Clutch or Kick, episode 8. Maybe confused.
No,
what?
You fool! It's
oh my god! You're so dumb.
We just had this big discussion about which number episode it was.
9. Oh my lord!
No wonder you're silver.
It's
man.
Clutch or Kick, episode 9.
This acting.
Welcome.
This acting.
This is where I would usually
Oscar level performance from Matthew.
This is where I would normally announce a sponsor, but this show is not sponsored. But if you want a sponsor, we're totally open to that. There's a ton to talk about. Really kind of like the balance patch, the main thing. Pop Flash was last weekend now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a ton to get into. I think we should talk about the death of Sage, though. We were talking about it before we went live, and then we decided to actually go live.
Music?
Yeah. Some sad music. We can bring up the patch notes. I can run through it, and then I'll get your guys' kind of reaction. This is like a big patch.
It is. This is a huge patch. Is this the biggest one that we've seen in the game?
I was gonna say that.
I think it's probably the biggest in terms of impact. I don't think it's the most changes, but it's probably the most impactful yet.
It changes the meta for sure.
Yeah, it's wild because usually like you need a patch that introduces like a new agent or a hero to like change everything up completely. But I mean, they just drop the atomic bomb on top of Sage's head. We can talk a little bit about what they've done to her. So the heal gets reduced from 100 over 5 seconds to 60 over 5 seconds.
That in itself is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, being healed up was already, I always thought it was of like sometimes arguable benefit because you've lost your armor anyway, so you've lost like a functional 50% of your health. But being only healed up 60 HP is, that's pretty monstrous, especially because a lot of the time you end up, when you want to heal someone, they're at really low health. Most of the time.
Yeah. Right. For the most part, yeah. I think the duration even is like a massive change because before you could be on a bomb site and like you could get the spike down and you could heal yourself before there was any chance of an engagement. 10 seconds is a long time. So now it feels like if you're in a plant situation, it would be very hard to get the full 10-second duration off before you're actually caught in an engagement. So I think nerfing both the duration, like the speed of the heal, as well as the actual healing amount itself is like too much, man. Like at least make it 80 or something.
Well, that's for allies, right? Which feels like it's a huge nerf. But then the self heal gets just annihilated. Self heal goes from 100 over 5 to 60 over 10.
Yeah, that's just more. But this is my issue with the nerf is that I like changes personally that are designed where they push a hero into a certain niche, or like the idea is to carve out a niche. Yeah. But they have pushed her into a niche where it's like you're just a healer, because if you're the one that is peaking and taking fights and then needing to be healed, or Riot are literally telling you don't do that when you play Sage, like this. I know that we were giggling about this, Wyatt. The concept of like the casters calling people battle sages, because at the beginning of the game, all of the sages played like massive pussies, and people didn't realize that Sage is just another hero. You can just play properly with Sage. You can just play like a functional player with Sage.
I do like the term battle Sage. Like they just gave Sage the ability to buy weapons like she wasn't able to before.
It's just ridiculous. It's just the implication that there's a heal only Sage. You're never fighting. You're just buying guns for your teammates, healing. It's a really peaceful, nice pacifist role.
But you're neutral. You don't want to kill anybody. You just want to walk around and heal and be a spectator.
But if I could tap into the game designer brain, okay?
Yeah.
So I am not actually Riot.
But you don't have.
I do not speak of behalf of Riot. Who are you to talk? Matt? How dare you? You said I didn't have a game design brain. Of course I have. I think if, to counter Josh's point where it's like, hey, you're only supposed to be a healer now, it actually forces some kind of team play where you can't just pick Sage and you're like, well, I'm just going to go into duels and I'm just going to heal myself. Because now it encourages sharing with your teammates and actually some kind of team play in this regard. So yes, is it rough? Yes, it's rough. But at the same time, for the people like Matt who are stuck in silver, it forces these players to use abilities on each other's teammates and stuff. And I think that's, you know, in the direction they really want to take heroes like this.
I don't like changes that reduce your freedoms, like your amount of freedoms. So because something I've been thinking about a lot is that people tend to think about this game as just like CS plus abilities. Like there's nothing taken away from CS. It's just CS plus a bunch of abilities. So you can do even more crazy shit. But actually, because you have abilities, there are better ways to use those abilities. So your degrees of freedom are actually reduced compared to CS. Like anyone at any time can entry in CS if you actually want to. And all right, your team might not be built to play that way. You might not have practiced that, but if at any point you want to push, aside from having bought an AWP, you're going to be able to play that entry role. But there are some heroes in the game, or some agents in the game of Valorant, that just shouldn't be playing entry because you get value over time. And this is now like even more forcing one play style onto Sage. Like I don't think that you should balance a hero so that you should only have one play style. I think the more styles that are open, the better, because that's how like you get the differentiation in terms of different teams having different takes on things. An agent should have more flexibility than just I must heal my teammates. And
so you want entry Sage. You want entry Sage.
He wants Battle Sage back.
You want Battle Sage back.
But the fact that people, for example, like David P, were able to get such enormous value from lurking on Sage, and it's not like, I mean, that is a weird way to play the agent because you're supposed to, in some sense, be near your team in order to heal them if they get hurt. So that's like a cool thing that he's able to take this hero and do something different with it. But if you pigeonhole the heroes into one tiny little point, then you just reduce the creative freedom of the game.
I get what you're saying, but I think she was starting to cross the line. Like what's the language they use for duelists? It's like they're fraggers who are self-sufficient. Like she was pretty much better like at doing that than some duelists. Like obviously she doesn't have like a flash or like anything to entry along those lines. I think this actually screams to me that they probably have another agent with some kind of healing mechanic in the works that will be a choice between like a more passive type like Sage and then somebody who's a little bit more aggressive. And then they probably would have blended into the same niche, or maybe another agent that has some type of wall barrier. But clearly what they've done to wall coming up means they don't exactly love it. Slow orb, they reduced the size by 30%.
Who was complaining about slow orb?
I mean, I thought it was in a pretty good spot considering all the nerfs they had since release.
Yeah, they've nerfed the shit out of slow orb and barrier orb since release, and I thought it was in a good position personally.
Yeah, I didn't see the problem with it at all. They don't last particularly long. They obviously don't do any damage. They just weren't... I mean, they were just useful, but not too significant or oppressive, and now they're just far less useful. I think that's really the problem with Sage's entire kit now, is that everything is far less useful. Not even just the being pigeonholed into a healer role, but she's not even that good on just being a healer now.
Well, the description doesn't make any sense. This should slightly reduce the power of slow orb and increase its intentionality. That's fine. But then it says, right now, slow orb unintentionally covers a lot more ground than it should. But don't you control how much ground it covers? Like, how did it unintentionally start covering more ground? I don't know.
I think what they mean is when you shoot it at a choke, you are trying to just cover that area of ground, but because it's so big, the area like spreads out deeper. I have definitely had times where I've slow orbed a choke, and because the way that slow orb works is it just fills an area, right? It's not like if you put it in a very small tunnel, it will spread out all the way down the tunnel. It's like dropping a bunch of water on the ground. It will just spread out for the area that it covers.
Yeah.
But man, they should hire you to write them.
Shut the fuck up.
The description: Sage slow orb was spreading too much like water on the ground and choked unintentionally.
But if you throw in the slow orb now and it still covers the choke, then it probably isn't going to make that much difference. I mean, it just like the little edge pieces that you weren't even using anyway are probably just not going to be there. I don't think this is a like horrific change. It's just really weird after they've nerfed the hero repeatedly again and again. And for the context, for any viewers that haven't been keeping up and still think that Sage is a perma pick, Sage might be picked a lot in ranked because it's still considered like a really good hero to just have all the time. But when you look at the pro level, in Europe, it's played 3/4 of the time. In the most recent tournament, 76% pick rate. And in NA, it's picked 38% of the time. North America has gone severely away from the Sage recently.
She was already on the way out even before this.
Yeah, I think she was.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the slow orb change because it makes it more intentional in that regard. Because what you'd see in like B Heaven, and we'll take a look at some of these tweets where some Sage players are definitely molding. Here's David P, not very happy that his main has been nerfed. I can relate as an Overwatch player. You hate to see it. But now it's time to show up on a new hero and show that you can play many different agents. Rather,
but hey,
not heroes at all. It's agents.
We aren't done.
No, we're not
wall
done.
Gets nuked well.
Oh yeah. The wall gets destroyed too.
Yeah, the cost is reduced, which is nice. It's reduced by $100. But the wall forms with 400 HP, and then after a 3-second delay, then it becomes fortified at 800. Have any of you guys played with this on the live server yet?
I mean, I haven't yet, but if an enemy Sage placed a wall, the majority of the time, if you're near it, the call for your team is to just destroy it immediately anyhow. Yeah. And now that's just going to happen even quicker. I mean, there's no reason to not ever just destroy it immediately once it goes up.
So what I wanted to say about the slow orb was that I quite like the slow orb change because it makes it more intentional. So like what would you see on B Heaven on Split? It's like you can throw down a slow orb on the tunnel, or you can throw it down in mid, and you don't have to worry about where it's placed. This one I don't like because Barrier Orb was already sort of intentional. Well, like when you put down Barrier Orb, it had a purpose to block off the enemy, and like you had to be very specific in how you used it to block off certain areas. You know, if you mess up a wall, like it's a big deal. So you had to be very specific about your use case of the Barrier Orb. With the Slow Orb, I feel like that wasn't necessarily in place because of how large it was. You just kind of yeet it out. You just yeet the Slow Orb. It's probably going to cover what you're doing. So it didn't have as intentional of a purpose. Now Slow Orb is more intentional, but then they nerfed the Barrier Orb on top of this, and it just makes the hero complete garbo. Like, it's just insane to me, because I think that Sage could have been in a really good spot had they just nerfed the Slow Orb. But this change alone just renders her completely useless. Like, it's ridiculous.
The wall is arguably the strongest part of... I know that this is going to sound like a hot take because everybody it talks about her healing so much, but to me, the wall and slow, like the potential to slow down a team that is trying to take an area, has always been, in my opinion, like the strongest part of her kit. It just breaks timings of people when they're pushing. And that tends to cause a lot more disruption to me on a more like consistent basis than the heal does, even though that's obviously very powerful as well. But the entire way that you skillfully use a wall is reactive. I mean, the note says reduce the strength of the wall during reactive use. I mauled sages in my games that just put their wall out at the beginning of the round, but that almost seems like that's what you're supposed to do now. You have to find a period of time where there are 3 seconds where no one's going to be shooting at it in order to get some value out of it. It's a very weird change that doesn't... There's no intuitive way of how to use it properly anymore.
It almost needs to be like predictive, but like 3 to 5 seconds in the future of being predictive. Like
that's so weird, right? And also, it might be a bit of an overreaction, because if you think about it, if a Sage puts up a wall in front of you and you still have to pause, shoot your entire clip at it, and then reload and then go in, well, that's pretty much the same as what you had to do with a Sage wall anyway.
Did you see that one tweet? I forgot who it was, but they were like, "Oh, I was at Riot HQ and I saw Sage leave out the back with a few people, and then I heard a gunshot, and then all the people came back in but Sage."
Yeah, they said it wasn't related.
They said it wasn't related.
That's brutal.
I think it's a copy pasta from League of Legends, presumably. But yeah, what I was saying was, but if it took your entire clip to take it out anyway, and you still had to reload, well, then that's basically the same amount of time saved. You've still stalled the same amount of time anyway, because like Wyatt was saying, you normally just burn down the wall when it pops up now. But because they've halved the HP, it only takes half your clip. You can still push through with half a clip.
Yeah.
Like that is an enormous nerf. An enormous nerf. The fact that you don't have to reload after breaking the wall and you can kill it and still push through immediately afterwards, that's the biggest nerf you could possibly do to Sage Wall, because the timing is broken by the fact that you have to reload after breaking the wall. Like that's what stops rushes.
The timing's probably so busted. I mean, playing with it on live, it's really fast, but like with a well-executed team, like if they put down a wall reactive, you could probably burn it down and then like flash around the corner and challenge the Sage, like as she's like done pulling the fucking out of the animation. Like, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with her going forward. I don't think it'll be good for Sage mains. Killjoy, the Nano Swarm.
Well, wait, there's one more tweet that's really.
There's one more tweet. Oh.
Yeah, it's good. It's good because it's from Sick, and Sick is the only guy in NA that I can think of that plays just like full-time Sage. I might be forgetting somebody that plays on one of these teams, but like even somebody like Akis has moved away recently. And Sick is he puts forward some eloquent opinions on why Sage is like kind of what he believes required for the metagame. I don't think it's a requirement. I don't think the game needs healing in the same way that he says here, but it's eloquent. It's mad. You know what I mean? It's like he's angry, but he's doing it in an articulate way. I just want to say to all of the pros like this, fucking give up. Fucking give up. It's not CS. This game is going to have enormous meta-wrenching changes to it very regularly throughout its lifespan. Learn from the Overwatch players and give up and adapt.
They've mentioned, I think, like with agent design, that they're creating like that they want the new agents to completely like shake up the game and the meta. Like it's definitely not something they're like shying away from, right?
Hell no.
It's almost something I feel like they're going to look at how they do with League of Legends, right? It's almost like how they're going to lean into it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll lean into it hard as a motherfucker.
League of Legends just introduced a new ADC who like runs off of combo points with like melee / range that has like Reaper's ultimate. Basically, it's like crazy. So I think you're going to see more wild stuff. But
I can't wait for pros to maul about an agent getting EMP. It's going to be great. EMP is coming. I'm just telling you.
It's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time.
Killjoy.
I mean, Killjoy has an EMP. That lockdown is an EMP.
You
just become
takes your gun
hands.
away. Yeah. Nano Swarm. So this needed some adjustment. I think the most frustrating thing was just Killjoy's planting the bomb, running in outer space, and then just hitting the button and just deleting you on the bomb site. This is a wind up before the damage. The DPS is reduced, and the visual effects been added to easily spot the grenade on the ground, which it's way more noticeable now. Having played some, you can easily see them on the site, where before it was really difficult to spot out. Which they agreed. Killjoy's Nano Swarm has been a terror to play against. That is a big statement there. But it was true, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was true. I mean, what was more frustrating than dying to the Killjoy ult is having died earlier on in the round and watching your teammates die to the Killjoy. Not the Killjoy ult, sorry, the Nano Swarms.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many post plants where I'm screaming to my team, guys, you've got to look for the mollies. You've got to kill the mollies on the bomb. You must clear the mollies on the site. And they go, and then I defuse the spike and just immediately die.
I'm responsible. I don't know. I didn't know how it worked.
But that's the kind of stuff as well that people would learn, right? Because like, I know from playing with you, Jonathan, you are not mentally defective. You would have learned that over time.
Thank you. I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Finally. Now I know.
Hey, it's only one opinion.
That's true.
Yeah, but Sideshow's the only guy worth listening to. So
true. Also true.
Yeah. We all know that's definitely true.
I think
did someone say something?
Not going to be that powerful.
Who, Killjoy?
Yeah, because the Nano Swarm was in my opinion, the most annoying part of her kit in terms of like ranked gameplay. And you could already see that at the pro level, whenever we were watching Killjoy being played in the European and North American tournament that happened recently, like no one was dying to mollies on the plant. It just didn't happen. So, I mean, as much as the mollies were like super powerful for clearing areas, they're still going to be pretty good for that. But you're just going to be able to see them easier in ranked. It's just a buff for the patats out there.
Yeah, I just think it nerfed her even just a slight nerf, but made her even worse on defense. And she's still going to be okay-ish on attack for the same reasons, just using them to clear a corner. But that's about it.
Yeah, and then also the turret no longer revealed by Soba's recon arrow.
Why was that ever a thing?
I don't know. And then more effectively shoots at the enemy's last known location. So okay.
Cool.
There were just moments where it was bugging out, shooting sort of randomly. That
there was a thing on Ascent, actually. Yeah. There was like this bugged patch on Ascent where if you were holding back of sight and they had put it B main, it would just shoot at the wall. And so you would know that there was a player just holding back of sight.
Did you see the they patched it today? It's not included in this patch notes, but the Cypher on defense on bind going through the spawn wall and being able to go into the other team's spawn before the game starts up.
I heard this on that shit, yeah.
Really?
I'll find the clip when we talk about the next one.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
Can we talk about the turret for 1 second? Because this is one annoying piece of shit. This turret, man. Every time I run into this turret, I mauled so hard about how annoying it is to get tagged by this turret. And then you're forced to like crouch down and spam like half your mag to get rid of this goddamn fiend of a turret.
Has like 125 HP, right?
It has
a lot of health.
You gotta reduce the health of this turret. It's so annoying to deal with.
I wouldn't. Okay, so I'm not opposed to the turret. I find it annoying as well. I wonder if they change the turret to not apply like the slow when you get shot, and you could still move like normal speed if it would not be as bad. Because I think that's what sucks about it is you get shot, you're slow, then like Johnny said, you have to dump a clip into it. Like it just ruins the flow of gameplay where already sometimes it can feel kind of slow.
Yeah. I don't really mind it except for the health component. I think it just has too much health. Because most of the time when you're fighting like a boom bot, for example, it's right up in your face. You can't miss a motherfucker. You're just spraying at it and you kill it. But the turret has a smaller hitbox than a player, and they're normally set in fucking Egypt. Like you're trying to shoot them, and they are miles away because they put them on these kind of flanks where they just shoot at you from a distance because they have infinite range. So you have to tap at this turret, and it takes what, 4, 5 bullets? I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is.
It's 4 or 5 though.
Yeah, I guess it must be 4, right? Because they have 39. Like the Phantom and the Vandal do 39 damage, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was looking for the Omen bug that I saw that to get out of the map. Evidently, there was another Omen bug that it got introduced with this patch that they had to do today that made Omen invincible for the remainder of a match.
Yeah, I heard about that too, yeah.
So Omen would use his teleport and cancel it at the end of a round.
Hold on.
And for the rest of the game, he would just become invincible. Like you'd shoot at him and it looks like blood would just be flying out of him, but he wouldn't be taking any damage.
Cool.
Yeah. But it's gone now. So
I think the problem with Killjoy just at the moment in terms of balancing is that she's riding the line of broken and bad really hard.
Yeah.
I feel like any slight nerfs could just tank the hero, and then they might try to pendulum swing back too far because she could easily be real. I mean, the turret's annoying when it slows you down, but they could have made her really busted and very well still may with any small buff to the turret if they make the nano swarm a little bit too bad, or if they take something away somewhere else. I worry about the balancing of this agent in particular moving forward.
Yeah. But, I mean, Sideshow, you will have more to say about this topic, but I do feel like the potential of Killjoy is sort of undiscovered in that regard. So while, she's pretty annoying to deal with in ranked right now, I think that we might even be able to push that skill ceiling higher with Killjoy as is. So I think for now you should leave Killjoy as she is, and then you'll see players really develop the play style and see what you can do creatively.
Yeah, I got your back. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Killjoy stuff. I've got a video planned. I've been going through all of the VODs of EU and NA play because it was the first time we saw Killjoy come out in professional play. And so I thought, oh, I'll do a video. I'll look at how the pros are using it on different maps. It's my opinion that even though that's a pretty valid argument that people will get better with Killjoy, I actually think that most of her kit is so passive that actually people will get better at countering Killjoy faster than they'll get better at being good at Killjoy.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good
Because
point,
a lot of her
actually.
kit is very static. And even if like you want to pick up her abilities and put them down, it's a 20-second delay. So you have to be very prescient in terms of where you want to be going on the map. So I don't think that Killjoy in its current state has that much potential because of the map designs currently. A lot of them are very closed and cramped and claustrophobic, and you don't get value out of the turret, where the turret is basically like worse than a cam would be. So she's got that kind of same issue. Having said that, with Sage being completely nerfed to the ground, Killjoy could be a very good replacement for Sage in some of these compositions where you run Cypher and Killjoy. But again, the value on the offense is so determined on whether you can get value out of the turret, and the maps are so cramped. So I think it also comes down to map design in the future.
I was going to say, I do think, that I think that teams are yet to maximize the usage of the turret on attack, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we've not once, at least from what I'd seen in NA of it, I don't think we once saw a team actually pick up the turret and move it later or use it in a post plant. It was only ever covering a flank. And I think that it would be...
I've gone through and I've looked at every single time it was used. Shall I tell you how many times that happened? It happened twice on Ascent. Twice on Ascent in 2 tournaments. And it happened once on Bind.
Interesting.
See, I said that during the Pop Flash tournament, and I felt like I was revolutionizing in Overwatch once more. And I was just like, this is brilliant. Why aren't people just putting out the turret post plant? Because it's so easy to trade with. If you just leave it in like a a regular angle whatsoever, you can start shooting. But players pushing into the site have to deal with it, and then just trade with it.
But again, though, Johnny, the problem is you have to remember 20 seconds before you push into the site. Like 20 seconds before you plant the bomb, you have to think, all right, we're going to commit to the site now, retrieve my turret that hasn't died already in the round. I'll pick it up. I'll get no value out of it because like you get the most value out of the turret while you're committing to the site because it covers your back as you're going in. There's no opportunity for flank and that kind of stuff. So,
people are playing Killjoy Cypher. So...
Yeah, so like hypothetically, how about on Haven, if you're on attack, they put the turret in the corner outside of A very regularly, right?
Yeah.
Like let's say you're doing some sort of, fake or default more towards C and garage, and you're going to finish A, you could rotate back, pick up the turret, have the Cypher place a tripwire in the door behind, maybe even put the alarm bot there instead, something along those lines. Yeah. And then when you hit A, you'll have the turret in for the post plant. Because I think that the turret would be most effective tagging players trying to come in for the post plant because it'll slow one down. So like imagine if you have the turret on A on Haven, you have a guy coming in from Heaven and one coming in from main, and one of them's getting slowed as he's trying to get in. It's possible that he might not hit the angle where he can trade for his other man, right? Like I think those are the kind of situations where it'll actually be really useful because I think the slowdown from the tag is the best thing about it. And hitting some guy on the flank who's going to spray it down from 90 yards away with the Vandal, I mean, it's not that effective, right?
Yeah, the slow is the best thing about it, but also the worst thing about it. Just, I hate the slow on it. But I linked Kurt the video of the Omen TP, but I also found some good quotes about the Sage nerf from one of the developers, from Wyatt. That it kind of goes into what I was talking about like future agents and how she was kind of ruining everything. So they said that Sage had the highest win rate on the attack, and only recently has seen a drop, but is still in the top 3 of attackers across the entire roster of agents. She's been on our radar for a long time now, and we've been very concerned about her health for the game. Okay. In fact, the Sage nerfs, which will hopefully bring her down in play rate, will open up the window for new healing agents to be added.
Right.
Sage healing for up to 100... or 100 up to 3 times per round felt like it was going to start to crowd out future restoration characters and even potential duelists as she could heal for 100. Sage as a restoration character should want to be healing others, while duelists should feel unique in the ability to heal themselves to get back into combat.
Okay. I mean, I don't like that final point in terms of like pinning them into one little avenue. But the rest of it makes sense. I mean, in terms of like opening up space for other other agents that they have in development.
yeah,
I mean, we have no idea what those are going to be. So.
Check this out. This is obviously gone from the game, so we can show it. But like the Omen like TPs on top, and he just goes through the wall.
God's sake! I guess that's because they're teleporting exactly where the Jett is, so it pushes them through the barrier.
Yeah, so there's no space. Could you imagine an Omen just rocking up into your spawn like that?
That guy's getting banned so fast.
Yeah, I mean, he's put his name out there as well, hasn't he?
Yeah,
he's gone.
Godspeed, streamer mode.
And then they also said that statistically, the lowest Sage's pick rate has been on the live game, just in ranked, I guess, in unranked. The lowest her pick rate's been on live is 89% since they've launched, hovering around a 54% win rate.
I think that is a lot of. I think that's also just a holdover from when she was incredibly good and people didn't have any idea of how to create sageless compositions, because it is pretty clear from like anecdotal evidence and the pro scene and stuff like that you don't need a sage to win. You just simply don't. And you can even have a better composition in some situations if you don't pick her. But so many people have got it drilled into their heads in ranked that we need a sage, we need a sage, we need a sage, that I mean, of course she's going to get picked that much because she used to be incredible.
They also said
meta inertia. That's what Avast calls it.
They also said that they want her to be one of the more mechanically forgiving characters, and that if she plummets in obscurity after the patch, they're going to give her a leg up for the next one. So,
they're going to make her into Moira.
Well, Viper gets some changes. The toxic screen can be placed through the spawn barriers. It's actually extremely odd to be playing defense and seeing the Viper thing kind of fly over the top from the other side. Yeah, and then and now it goes up faster along its full length once it starts to form. So this is a buff, I guess, to Viper's Wall, although shooting it out of your spawn in one location kind of gives the enemy an idea of what's about to happen.
That's why it's good, because you can bluff. On pistol rounds specifically, you can just be like, hey, Viper Wall's at A, and meanwhile you place it in spawn, so you've already rotated to B. So there's not that delay where you actually plant it on A, and then you have to rotate back to B. Now you can just place it at A, and then rotate to B in spawn before the round is even started. And it's just this shock factor, so you can, block easily.
And there are already some sick like angles that you could get Viper Walls, especially on a map like Split on offense, right? To be able to hit like such a large part. If you're able to get those down pre-round, I could see how that would scare a defensive team to maybe rotate somebody like a little bit early that you're going to get hit like super hard.
Or on bind. I think she would be viable on bind.
This I think is actually pretty big, that the decay on all smoke abilities no longer affects allies.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. That's pretty huge. Yeah. Because that was always such a huge issue with her before, that you just take so much damage as a teammate. You would never want to push through it. You wouldn't really want to go up and flash through it. If you did and there was an enemy on the other side of the smoke, you would just be at less health immediately in that fight. I could see her, I mean, I don't know how good she'll be, but I could see potentially on Split some usage of her now where people are trying to push through her smokes, maybe with the Phoenix or the Reyna, flash out of it.
Yeah. I don't think this is going to make very much difference to the pro level whatsoever in terms of like Viper's pick rate or anything like that, because I mean, most of the time when you have the ult, I mean, this is basically to do with the ult, right? I mean, the time taken to be able to get through the smoke isn't that important, but sitting around inside of her ultimate is enormous for your health, or at least it used to be when it did damage to you. But pretty much at the pro level, if you've managed to get in a position to utilize the ult, you're winning that round anyway. So it didn't make that much difference.
She'll probably become pretty sick as like a pub stomper, though.
You think?
Yeah, I'll say this. If I get a Reddit Andy in my team who plays Viper, knows the walls and the smokes, and uses them correctly, I'm not gonna be upset at the slightest. I'll actually embrace it. I'll embrace the Viper, the Reddit Andy Viper in my game who knows the wall placements. It might even be me. I might run into you in ranked playing Viper, knowing all the placements. And I'll embrace the fact, because I think that Viper is a sick hero, and it's only a matter of time before she's meta. I'm calling it.
It is quite interesting now that Sage is nerfed, that it opens up these other ideas, though. Because if Sage is just out completely, then I mean, I don't know whether any of you have seen Bonk play on Split. They're basically the only team in the world at the top level of the pro scene that use a Viper. This guy called Safe, a Swedish guy with insane aim, uses...
That's me.
Yeah. uses Viper on Split.
15 years ago.
He's very good with it. I mean, and it like turns Split from being a very defensive-sided map into a pretty much even map, because Viper's not very good on defense, but she's very good on offense. So it kind of neutralizes Split's natural tendencies in some sense. And I think that now that Sage isn't in, it just frees up a spot for one of these flex weird picks like Viper to be viable.
Whenever Kurt pulls up a YouTube video, I'm always
I'm
always amazed. Whenever it's an unprompted video that Kurt pulls up, I know it's gonna be gold. Yeah, that's a good one.
There it is. There it is.
And then Viper's Pit is now shown to teammates on the mini map when deployed. That's just so if you're completely clueless in your game and nobody's using a mic, maybe you have an idea of what's actually happening and you don't just see green everywhere when you show up at a site. Let's talk about Breach. I think they've made Breach pretty strong now, but
fucking unbelievable.
Yeah. Flashpoint. So the off-screen flashes now match behavior of other flashes in the game. This is just to kind of bring it in line with, I guess, what Phoenix, right? And then I don't think Lear works this way, but
yeah, I actually have no idea what that means. I don't know what that means in terms of off-screen flashes now match behavior of other flashes in the game. Does that mean? Actually,
you can kind of get like. You can kind of get like half flashed in a way,
but
I think.
But Breach never used to half flash you. Breach used to full flash you, even if it was on the corner of your screen.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a nerf to his flashes.
Yes, but he gets an extra flash, and the windup is reduced. 3 flashes, I think, is a lot. Especially 3 flashes through a wall. I think that is a really like. How we were talking about before, where like Killjoy is on the verge of like being completely like just crazy. I think Breach's kit also has that ability to be just completely crazy with like a stun through a wall, 3 flashes, like a huge line concussion that they adjusted in this as well. But I think Breach is going to be pretty good.
Yeah. I was playing some Breach in ranked, and I mean it deserves to be mentioned that now Breach has a lot of utility and it costs money. So, if you're going to buy 3 flashes every round, that's 600 buccarinos, whatever it's called.
Buccarinos.
That's a good
buccarinos. Point. And but still, I mean, I was committing to playing with bulldogs all the time, just like for utility. But still, I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane because you have 5 utility pieces, and I was essentially it's ranked, it's not the pro level, but I was just running around, just like flashing every corner, using an ability all the time, just being so proactive with his kit now. And it's not like any other agent in the game, because usually you have to be very specific about the use case, where you're going to use it, and what time in the round. With Breach now, you can essentially, specifically because oh my god, I forgot what that other name with the abilities are.
The rolling thunder, is it the knockup or the old
aftershock and
concussion,
something like that? Yeah, because they're on the timer, right? So they'll recharge in the round as well.
Concussion is
concussion.
Yes. And so you can just use like 2 of those, 3 flashes, and you just run around and you just use abilities, and you can be so proactive with Breach's kit now that it's absolutely insane. Every wall you can enter through 3 walls with flashes. And then you have 2 more abilities to use, and it's nuts. It's very fun to play, but it's absolutely insane because it's so unforgiving. You can just use the utility.
He feels like once you can start to get a lead and like a good grasp of like the economy, and like you can actually spend like willy-nilly on those abilities, he would just become like the ultimate snowball, just kind of out of control agent.
Yeah.
With all that they've done. What do you think, Josh?
I think that he was on the I mean, Breach was originally considered an S tier agent by people coming out of the beta, and then he kind of fell out of favor as teams instead wanted to go for double duelist setups, especially in North America. I mean, people figured out how busted Jett with the AWP was, and then they still wanted some kind of proactive flash duelist, but they needed someone to entry, and Breach isn't really an entry. He's more of like empowering someone else to entry, at least at the pro level where the timing is so specific. In ranked, you could get away with flashing yourself into a lot of angles. But there's a lot of teams that that play in Europe, and Gen.G, for example, and Sentinels actually as well with Shazam, that already play with Breach. And this is just, it's taking, and those teams, by the way, tend to be the more coordinated ones. They tend to be the ones that can get value out of Breach because they're really good at being able to sync stuff up with each other. And so the idea of these teams now just having an even better Breach, which also concusses AWPs out of their scope. So even if you catch somebody with it, you are never going to be able to scope back in. If you, well, not never, but over the duration of the stun, you can't scope back in, which is important, not just because that happens, but because it's going to make AWPers even more scared of getting caught by it. So you're now, if you see that concussion coming towards you, you're going to fucking yeet yourself out of there real fast if you're on an AWPer. Whereas previously you might have been all right, you know, taking a risky peek and seeing if you could catch somebody and go back out. I think that he's going to be maybe not a perma pick, but he's going to be much more popular than he was previously, and he was already a niche pick.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's almost in permapick territory, though, especially with Sage being gone, because he's the perfect trade, right? He's the perfect man to come in for the trade after you set up your entry to go in, which the Sage was often trading on attack anyhow. So that's a role to be filled that he fills. And as you were saying, it's also a slight nerf. It's an indirect nerf to AWPers, which was needed. I thought we would actually see something done to the AWP or the Jett in these patch notes. But this was sort of an indirect minor hit to AWPing, just because those flashes are the flashes that you can send in deep to hit an AWPer at a far angle, and obviously the concuss change. So I'm excited to see how these play out. I don't think that they're necessarily too much right now, actually. I do think we'll be seeing a lot more Breach, but I'm hesitant to say it's too much or will be overpowered.
Yep. The rolling thunder, the ult that it becomes faster, right? So just kind of moving on, and then like you mentioned, Josh, that the concussion now descopes players. Sova, big one, updated the physics on his cape. So that it should go outside the hitbox less frequently.
It actually has made a difference in a bunch of different rounds in pro play, because people jiggle beat the angle and you suddenly see like a fucking glorious, honestly magnificent looking cape spill out into the distance. You're like, well, I guess the Sova's right there.
Yeah, nothing really too significant with Sova. Weapon updates. We can talk about these real quick. All shotguns get an aim punch update. When you're getting headshot by a shotgun, the aim punch should be lower than all the other weapons. So this is what, like, Bucky, Shorty, the Judge, right?
Namely.
Shotguns again, more shotguns nerfs. So all shotguns tagging tuned for targets beyond 10 meters. So hitting an enemy past 10 meters will apply a different tagging value to them instead of standard tagging. So the new tagging is 30% slow for 0.5 seconds on a smooth curve going back to normal speed. It's supposed to improve the feel of playing against shotguns and ensure they don't end up doing odd things. I'm okay with shotguns not doing odd things. I don't think anyone else argued that. Shorty nerf. The first fall off range reduced from 9 meters to 7 meters. They updated the headshot multiplier from 3 times to 2 times.
I didn't even know this was a thing.
As the Judge from the Bucky. Yeah,
I didn't even know this was a thing. I was wondering how the Shorty was able to do unbelievable damage for a $200 weapon. And I guess it was partly because that every shot to the head was doing 3 times damage.
That is really absurd that's how it began. For 200 credits? 200. That's out of control, man. Yeah, that's a good change.
And then the Judge gets nerfed, so it gets a price increase, 1,500 to 1,600. So this puts it at the same price as an Ares, right? The Ares is 1,600, I believe, and the Spectre, So this is a bit of a nerf to the Judge there. And then the Vandal gets a buff.
So this is interesting.
So they increased the firing rate, 9.25 to 9.75. They increased the damage by 1. Playing with it on live, the Vandal feels like really nice. Like it feels quick. It doesn't seem like it's a huge change in the firing rate, but when you're actually playing the game, it does feel pretty substantial.
Yeah, I've always been a Vandal boy, so this makes me very happy. Even though Phantom was obviously the superior weapon, I've always been a
Are there any
Vandal
stats
boy, so.
in terms of the pick difference between Phantom and Vandal?
I was trying to look for that actually because someone did a thing on one of the subreddits. I think it was on Valorant Competitive. They looked at the Vandal versus Phantom usage in North America, and they said it was something like it was roughly. God, I'm just pulling numbers out my ass,
90-10?
but it was something like that. It was like really high towards the Phantom, and they were just kind of talking about. And I think Tens put out a YouTube video recently as well, talking about how the Phantom is just a better weapon, etc., etc. But when you look at Europe, a lot of their riflers, and generally speaking, I would say they are better riflers with better first tap aim. Just in Europe, they just tend to be more skilled. They're blowing people's heads off, and they use a lot of Vandal. You'll see people like Zipan and who the fuck else uses Vandal a lot? I think Angel uses it, but there's a bunch
Link
of other people as well.
Scream's been using it a lot. I think what's interesting, the interesting point about the Vandal being used in EU is not just that it's being used, but that it was trending in use, right? These were guys who were using the Phantom before, but they actually started switching to the Vandal, and you were beginning to see the Vandal more. So,
and
I mean, now you're going to see it a lot more, but...
Part of the reason for that is because these are the kind of guys that are entrying. Like a lot of the entry guys to wide peak AWPers were starting to use Vandal because they're that confident in their first shot that they just want to be able to nail the AWPer or at least get them within the first two. And you don't have to worry about spray from a long distance to be able to finish them off before they can hit you. And even though that doesn't normally make a difference, it specifically makes a very big difference against AWPers. And it's something that hasn't really happened in North America at all. And I don't know whether that's because we don't have people that have that level of nutty aim, like that level of ridiculous one-tap aim that people like Zipan and Scream have. But there what I hesitate. I would recommend caution for anyone who is just using North American statistics to decide whether the Phantom or the Vandal is better, because I think it's also just a preferential thing based on aiming styles and aiming ability as well.
Good point, though. I was just going to say, it is a little micro-op nerf, potentially, as well. Not micro-nerf, but it could be, right? Just being able to one-tap from the distance.
I mean, potentially. If more people start using the Vandal, then maybe. You still got to hit the shot, though, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean made the... I obviously watched a lot of Sean Gare's stream during Pop Clash, because I found it very insightful of him to provide like analysis, commentary, drawing on the minimap and all that good stuff, the radar, actually. During the matches. And one point he actually made regarding the Vandal Phantom debate was that he pointed out how when you're playing defense a lot of the time, you will have the attackers push into an angle, which means it's more likely you will actually start spraying because you'll have 2 or 3 people come around the corner at the same time, and that's where the Phantom is more effective. While if you play on attack, oftentimes you will round that corner and look for the first bullet accuracy so you can nail the headshot and dispose of that one defender immediately, because you'll only be really fighting or dueling one guy on that defense. So you want to get rid of him as soon as possible, and that's really when the first bullet accuracy comes in, and that's where you want to play the Vandal on attack. And you don't have to spray as much on attack, obviously, because oftentimes the defenders are spread out and you take one-on-one duels. So that was a small thing he pointed out, but obviously, we don't see all attackers using Vandal, but,
It's kind of like the
difference.
CS logic, right? I mean, obviously on CS, you have the AK on offense, which kind of acts like a Vandal, and then on CT, you use like an M4, right?
Yeah, and the M4 is even weaker than the Phantom, though, because you can't one-bullet headshot, which is a huge difference between the two. And part of how the maps are balanced as well is that the attackers have just a better gun.
Yeah.
So
some small other changes with this patch, I think we can just cover real quick. The hit impact visual effects update. So this is basically to just try and give more clarity to when you're actually hitting bullets, just kind of avoiding some of the things that happen in every shooting game, to be honest, where it looks like you're hitting somebody, blood is coming out of them, but nothing's happening. Competitive updates, an option to remake the match.
So this is an interesting one. Have any of you been in a game where people voted to remake yet?
No,
not yet.
I think it's mostly for unrated. I could see people dropping out of unrated a lot. And I've actually made the mistake of accidentally queuing unrated a lot of the time because they're so close to each other. And it's hard to notice whether you're queuing for unrated.
Does this work in unrated? Or is it just in comp?
I mean, I don't know.
I think it may Well,
This might
it
only
says
be comp.
competitive updates. Yeah, I think it may just be comp.
Yeah, it probably is.
Well then, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
Well, actually, yeah. No. I
Yeah,
think
because it talked about
just
MMR
comp.
adjustments.
Yeah,
and stuff.
MMR
Yeah, I think
adjustments.
it is
Yeah.
just competitive.
And then they added an incognito mode. Thank God. I think this is one that was really hurting creators and streamers playing the game. Being because a lot of them, like I think I was watching Jordan Fisher the other day. You had to put on like a 30-second delay, which just kind of ruins the ability with chat. But this basically gives you a streamer mode where it turns everybody's name into like just what agent they are. It turns your name into B. You can also, there's a lot of options in there. So you can actually have it so it shows the people on your team's accounts, or you can hide them. You can opt to hide yours, change how it is. So I think this is just good. Like they need more kind of people streaming Valorant outside of tournaments, right? Like more people just playing the game.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. Some observer quality of life stuff.
Hallelujah. I don't know what the specifics are. I haven't bothered to look through them, but any changes to observer mode is a massive help because it kind of sucks at the moment.
Yeah, so they can toggle aim lines for players. I assume that's kind of like how CS, where the line just comes directly out of the front of the character to kind of show what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They can change outlines of visibility. Corpse markers shown when corpse are disabled now. They go by the colorblind settings.
Cool.
Money in the HUD. Stuff that doesn't affect us, but does affect us because we end up like a lot of this stuff, like the observers are probably freaking out about in a positive way, and we just glance over it in 2 seconds and say, cool, we don't know anything about that because we're not observing, but
yeah,
it'll make an impact when we actually get to see more tournaments and watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the sooner they can fix the, or not fix, but the sooner they can set up a good looking HUD, the better. Because the difference between watching Valorant and watching CS, the biggest difference to me is just an inability to tell what weapons everyone is using, what money they have, what everyone's health is on easily. Obviously, you can look at the top of the screen for that, but it's easier to scan left and right. And then also the abilities that they have up as well. Like all of this information could be super easily displayed by having those like 5 rows on either side of the screen, like not Call of Duty, like CSGO has.
Yeah.
But the observing mode has not been updated yet.
I also think it's just kind of, it makes it very difficult when there's so many abilities and whatnot, and with agents being the same sometimes on both sides of offense and defense, and there's no, like, to somebody new, there's no visual kind of representation of like whose wall that is or whose slow it is or like what like molly it is. Like there's not really, it's all kind of just the same color.
Yeah. Some of them are quite well done. Like I quite like the like brim smokes that have the swirling red in them.
Yeah.
If they're done by the red team. But sometimes, like you say, it's just a molly on the floor and you're like, who the fuck's molly is that? How are you supposed to tell? It's fire colored. What does that mean? It's red teams?
Nah, there is like a small, I think, visual like connotation like around the outside and even like in it, like how you mentioned the brim smoke. But to somebody who's just kind of checking it out and tuning in, you're just kind of like, what is that?
Yeah.
But I think people will get used to it over time. Let's talk about the level 2 Clash event. This is the one where Liquid goes out in groups.
I'm molding, Matt. I'm actually molding straight up because before I made this, before I started work on this Killjoy thing, I had put in probably about 30 hours of work trying to build a video out about Liquid's new style because they have only just found a style that looked like it was working really well for them. And then just as I'm like, oh, well, while I put the final pieces together for this video, let's see how they do in this tournament. Let's see if I can pull any clips from that. They fucking bomb out in the groups. Cool. Real good. I thought that team had so much potential and they just had horrible performances. I went back and I watched the streams from Scream's point of view and the team's all over the place.
It was really bad. I didn't catch too much of it, but the small parts I did, it feels like it's really catching up to them. What you mentioned, Josh, where they're like play a 5-stack and they're not really as proactive about map control and stuff anymore. Like they were playing against bonking groups and like they were struggling to take control of like a long on Haven and stuff, and it's just like so uncharacteristic. And like they were taking unnecessary duels without utility, just like dry peeking, and it just felt like an off tournament really in my mind.
They beat Skade in round 1. Then they end up playing they play Bonk. They lose 13-7, and then they play Skade again on the same map. They played Bind both times. They lose the second time 13-11.
Yeah.
They won the first one 13-10.
And I mean, Skade is a team that used to be called Fabrican, but only has one player from that team because their better players ended up getting picked up by FPX. So this is a team, in my opinion, that no top team should be losing to. You might lose rounds to them or have a somewhat close map to them. But at the same time, they played a game against Fun Plus Phoenix, who were previously on about a similar level to Liquid, and Skade got bodied by Fun Plus Phoenix. They lost 13-1, 13-5. Just the sheer fragging was enough to wipe the floor with them. And Liquid's inability to be able to outskill their opponents, but also their fact that they were having a total off day in terms of, like you said, Johnny, just taking like ego peaks, not properly supporting each other, having a bad read on where the enemies were going to be pushing and rotating. It just, they boomed themselves.
I think specifically Liquid losing on Haven to Bonk, I feel that should never happen. Just in terms of the level of team play that Liquid have shown on Haven specifically, and in the previous tournament, I forget the name of that one, the BO2 one.
Yeah, the Allied Odyssey.
Yeah, the Allied Odyssey. They were so good on Haven throughout that whole tournament. And then to lose to Bonk, who I think team play, in a general sense, their individual level is insane, but their team play is not at the level of the other top European teams. That's where they typically fall short.
Yeah.
And I think to lose on Haven of all maps, it's pretty rough. Though this isn't the first time as well that Liquid have gone out in a BO1 tournament. It was their first tournament that they had Scream. It was that wild 256 team BO1 ridiculous tournament. Yeah, they got knocked out in that in BO1s as well. So it is BO1s. It is tough to say, but you can't. I don't know.
Just
losing
for an indicator
Haven, that
of
hurts,
how
man.
bad
That hurts.
individually they were playing, though. They're going up against Bonk, who have really a lot of firepower. Like Yassine is ridiculous, and Safe also has unbelievable aim. Ziz, their Omen player, is also really good. They have the firepower to be able to compete at the top level. They're insanely good riflers. But Eccles, who on Haven is he's always their IGL, but on Haven he plays a bit of a lurking role as well. He tries to creep his way in through like Garage and B and this kind of stuff. He went 3-18 on their best
not
map.
ideal.
No, so I mean, but he's not a big fragging guy. He's a smart guy, right? So that just shows you as well that the entire setup of what they were doing was just not working because they weren't able to effectively make space for him. They weren't able to effectively find holes and gaps in the Bonk defense. They just got shit on and read hard everywhere they went. Bonk were holding 3 people on A when Liquid liked to make like A pushes early on in the rounds. So that was getting shut down, and Liquid just didn't adapt at any point during the series. It was very disappointing.
Yeah, their final map, one last point, sorry, but their final map against Skade as well on Bind, they changed nothing on their defensive half, and they were just getting rolled over on B, and Scream that entire game on defense was just sat on Sage on A, just wishing, you could tell he was wishing he could do more, but his team, they were just getting wrecked on B, and they just were making no significant changes between rounds.
That's what I was going to say. The offensive sides of both of their first and the last game they played against Skade were the same exact scoreline going into the half. Their defense in the first series was better, but like you mentioned, there weren't many adjustments, and Skade was able to take 6 rounds, I think, on their offensive attack. It's pretty.
Latex also had an enormous game. I mean, he went 30-18, and he was trolling them. Like he was just teleporting in and demolishing them. So that was a big individual performance by Latex that he didn't really repeat for the rest of the tournament. And at the same time as I'm saying that this is really disappointing, it is also a product, like you were saying, Wyatt, of incredibly shite European formats.
Yeah,
like
it's
unbelievably
control,
horse-wank
It's-
European formats. Unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
Liquid, I've got a tweet, Kurt, that I sent you. It's from their head coach, Sliggy. Head coach, their coach, Sliggy. And this guy...
Not the assistant coach.
No,
He's the
Josh
head
is
coach.
foaming at the mouth.
He
He's
said,
pumped.
yeah, I am. I'm fucking foaming because Sick tweeted about like, oh, we don't have a map advantage in the BO5 finals of Pop Flash. Woe is me. And Sliggy's like, shut up, kid. We have not played a single BO3 since becoming Team Liquid.
Oh, that
Yeah,
sucks.
it's absurd.
Not
man.
one BO3
The amount of
in over a
BO1s
month of being Team Liquid.
The amount of BO1s that the allied format for the playoffs of that last tournament. I mean, yeah, it really is appalling tournament formats.
This is
very
gonna turn
disappointing
the
because
European scene into just shit soup, where you have no idea who the better teams are because they're all beating each other in BO1s and they can't get effective practice against each other, and there's no real competition because the tournament formats are terrible.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it in a bit, but I feel like that's what Pop Flash really got right. I think their format was just top notch. But let's talk about G2. They end up winning the EU Ignition series. Is this? I don't think this is much of a surprise, is it?
No, I would certainly say no. Though, got to give FPX some credit for a good showing. Still,
a very good showing.
Angel, so impressive. I can't believe he's as good as he is in this game. It's honestly pretty incredible to watch him.
He was their second best player in this tournament.
It's actually absurd. But
he was supposed to be like a washed IGL, wasn't he?
I mean, I think I could be wrong, but I think Angel is the oldest active pro right now. I believe.
30,
could be wrong. He's 33.
He's 33.
He's 33.
What,
I mean, he's been playing CSGO since before I was born. He's been playing for so long, and it's just so cool to see someone be.
No, he's 30.
No, Liquipedia says he's 30.
Oh, really? Liquipedia lied to me, or wherever I saw.
He's got the 4 kids, dude. He drives a minivan. The guy's only 30. Come on.
All right, well, my sources are feeding me faulty information. But he's the second oldest pro, I think.
Why? Who is the oldest then?
Sinatra, he's 35. Oh shit, my bad.
I don't know why I know all these age facts, but I'm pretty sure it's Cutler. Or Hayes.
Oh really?
He's been collecting their social security numbers. He knows everything about them.
Let's see how old Cutler is. Cutler's 31. Yeah, he is old.
Okay, there it is. But still, point stands. Great comparison. Cutler, Angel, both some on the older side of pros. One of them real good. One of them, well, he's playing. So big difference.
Hayes is also 31. So I guess Angel gets bumped down to third oldest pro.
Yeah, true.
Slowly bumping him down the rankings. I'm just looking up like the old players that I know. But I mean, Hayes is a very apt comparison though, because they both play the same role for their team, the smoking role. Sure. And to see Angel just pick up a Vandal and chat his way through chokes, one tap in AWPers. Like Mixwell is, you can tell when these guys, when G2 plays against
How old
FPX.
is he, Kurt?
Boss, come on.
35.
Come on, dude. All right.
You can tell when G2 plays against FPX that they are actively scared of AWPing against Angel and Zipan because those guys have crazy wide swings where they'll just wide swing and one tap you with a Vandal. And it's nuts that Angel is able to put up that kind of performance. They're crazy.
Yeah, and I mean specifically because he was the IGL of Hellraisers, right?
Yes.
In CS:GO,
For
and he was never like
time.
the what?
For a really long time.
Yeah. For a really long time, but he was never like the star player of that team either, because I think that if I recall correctly, they were relying on players like Oscar, Bondic. Did they have Stiko? I'm not quite sure. But they had like two or three like different like star players, not star players because they were never like top tier, but really good players they could rely on for fragging power. And Angel was just like the backup IGL for this team, who was like doing work when it came to strategy and stuff. But seeing like this amount of firepower, it's like unreal to see from him at this age, so it's super impressive.
Yeah, very good. I think that you could make an argument that FPX should have won this series, because you look at their bind performance. Like if you take it map by map and you look at how they played in this semifinals match, FPX have improved so much in a very short span of time. And they were leading for an enormous amount of time towards the end of Bind. G2 had to put together some nasty good clutches towards the end of that map in order to, I think they dragged it into overtime and won like 15-13.
Yeah, they were down 9-12 at one point, G2.
Yeah, they're down 9-12 and they pull it all the way back to be able to go into overtime and then come out the win. I mean, that is just insane. FPX was the better team on Bind. And then you go towards Split. And so what I found interesting about Split is that they were running this Cypher Killjoy comp, but with the Sage. So it was the same kind of thing that we saw trying to be run by Cloud9, I think was the only team that ran it, but they ran it twice in Pop Flash, and it's heavy defensive. You're not really supposed to get many attacking rounds. FPX get 3 attacking rounds. They look all right, and they go into the defense. It's a very tough comeback for them, but they are 1 round away from tying it up and going into overtime. Sorry, they're 1 round away from getting to the final round, and Zipan's internet lagged or the server lagged or something like that, and he got killed on an eco and they lost the map.
Yeah,
it was like
actually tragic.
They were 100% going to be able to take that to 11-12 and maybe be able to get it to overtime, and then Zipan died in ropes and they ended up losing the map and losing the series.
That clip was actually tragic as well, because he was standing in ropes and suddenly just people appear right in front of him, and it's just so sad.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it.
Yeah, that is actually
it should be on his Twitter, I think.
Here it is. Yeah, I've got it for Kurt.
It's the unfortunate of online play.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that happens.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, huge opportunity for them to win this series, and FPX are improving at a rapid rate. So the next time that we have Ignition series, G2 won all of the events, that whatever the next series is, FPX are going to be right up there with them. They're going to be neck and neck. I wouldn't really
It's only a matter of time.
It's so sad. He's holding ropes, and then all of a sudden, here's a race. Boop. I mean, what can you really say about this?
Dude, they just
into existence.
They just appear. And on their screen that looked probably nothing like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, G2 looked really strong. Like Josh mentioned, though, on G2's attack on Split, they end up winning the first 2 rounds. They win pistol on offense, and then they win the round after, which puts FPX in a really tough spot because they go down 12-4, and then they almost run it back. But yeah, I mean, that is asking a lot there.
I mean, I also think that composition isn't good, right? I don't think that
Cypher Killjoy
and Sage on Split. So you only have 1 duelist, and you don't really have any ways of getting into the sites. You really just, you're kind of banking on the fact that you can just use Killjoy ult for a free round every time. And against the top players, you can't really do that. You can get a lot of value out of it, but you can't guarantee a round win. So I don't really like that they did that, but they were on their favored side, right? Once you get to the defense, you're then in a position where you should be racking up at least 8-9 rounds. So it should have been a pretty even game. It just, in the end, it came down to that Zipan moment.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, if you're going to play Cypher Killjoy, like you mentioned, you are expecting to win almost every round on D, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. I mean, they win 3 rounds on attack, which, I mean, isn't bad for a map like Split.
Yeah,
it's just kind of terror on attack. But to only, I mean, they give up 4 rounds, right? But to not win those early ones, especially with that comp, kind of puts them in a really shit position.
Yeah.
It's only...
I was just going to say,
what are you saying? Last point, I just want to say, it's only a matter of time, though, before they beat G2 in a BO3. I think it's inevitable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, you've just reminded me as well. I absolutely hate the narrative that G2 is dominating Europe and it's boring in the same way that, like, Absolute Jupiter is dominating in Japan or something like that. Vision Strikers in Korea.
Where are you seeing these takes?
On podcasts with analysts and casters talking about Valorant. People who are being hired for events are talking about this, and it is making me mauled, Wyatt. It's making me mauled.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous
it's affecting my
point.
dog
That's so
well.
untrue.
He's not happy about it.
Sorry, Hugo.
He just woke up from a nap, and hey.
Yeah, I think there's like
if
you don't watch the games, if you have no idea of the European scene, and if you only watch North America, it's very easy to look at the results and just say, oh, well, G2's just Mars, they're just head and shoulders above everybody. They're the only good team in a bad region. And that's kind of what I assume for Absolute Jupiter and Japan. I haven't done an in-depth review of Japan. I don't know whether they're incredible, but they're crushing everybody like 13-5, 13-8 in their games. People very rarely get into double digits against them.
But isn't that like what you want? Because if everybody's beating everybody, who cares?
Well,
like,
you need some level of competition.
Yeah, but I think though, like, I mean, winning everything, there still can be like some levels of competition. It's just kind of consistency. I think. I personally, I'd rather you see like a dominant team for a while, and then like you see a team start to rise up, right? And you can kind of project like, oh, they're going to beat them like in X amount of time. They're getting close, and you have that kind of build up and that lead up to that moment and that game. Seeing everybody play BO1s willy nilly, just kind of beating everybody, every once in a while. I don't think that's exactly super kind of healthy. Yeah, that kind of blows.
But I just want to like reinforce the idea that Europe is a very competitive region with incredibly talented players, and it is just straight up wrong to say that the other, like for example, I think someone was commenting on the fact that Bonk made the finals against G2 and got slapped, right? Which is fair enough. It was a wonky-sided bracket, and it wasn't the two best teams that ended up making it to finals, probably. I would say that FPX were a much better team than Bonk were. At the same time, the idea that Bonk is a bad team, I think is just wrong.
It's
Bonk
ridiculous.
A bunch of teams in North America. Bonk would arguably beat Envy, who made it to the finals.
They would absolutely beat Envy. I think they would beat Envy. Yassine and Safe are ridiculous, man. Those two guys are incredibly talented individually. And again, that team, their main struggle when we saw them, I don't know, like a month ago, it was just always team play for me. Whenever I watched them, they were so undisciplined. But that is slowly starting to change. And they're going to be I think they're going to be a legit top team. If there's any team that's going to enter that 4th slot in EU, if they're not already there, honestly, it should be them.
I think it just kind of proves that Josh has way too much time on his hands. He gets angry watching other podcasts, which I wasn't even sure other podcasts exist, because this is really the only podcast I know that exists.
It's true.
And he didn't stream for 20 something days, so all he is on competitive Valorant, just looking up hot takes, just driving himself into madness.
I know. I don't know why I do it. I don't know why I should just.
You like the pain. You like the mental pain of it.
I should just isolate myself from the rest of humanity in order to preserve my.
I mean, you pretty much are.
My mental. Yeah, a little bit. I am at the moment, but I mean, in terms of my interactions with them on the internet, I think that would be more healthy for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's something to consider. You should speak to somebody about it. Pop Flash was also this last weekend. Our good friend Monty put on this event. I know some of our buds casting it. I thought this was maybe it was because it was in a studio, but I thought this was like, it really kind of showed the potential of where this game could go, and how awesome it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it had everything. It was not only because it was actually in a studio, it was actually done correctly in everything besides
the format was great.
So the format was actually good. European players surely getting jealous. But also just like the atmosphere of the event overall, because you obviously had companion streams, and Myth has been companion streaming a lot of former events. But now when Sean Garris was in the mix, it was really entertaining to follow him. And then you also had, I really enjoyed the segments where they were actively like calling up other personalities within Valorant.
Yeah, that was such a cool idea.
Yeah, to the show. And it's like, it's so proactive. It really makes it feel like a community show, like you're getting everyone involved and everyone's watching, and it's a fun, nice experience. So Pop Flash did a lot of things right. Not only was it like great matches and the top teams, but just the atmosphere and the entire feel behind an Ignition Series event was really there. So that just displays how much thinking went into it and how much great product.
Yeah, they did a wonderful job, like incorporating like the player cameras into it, right? Giving you an idea of like who the hell these players are. Just seeing their faces and whatnot, trying to build their personalities. Yeah, just they're not just a name attached to some agent skin character. Like they're actually a human, controlling that. I also like some of the meme stuff they did. What was that? There was one round that was just a clown fiesta.
Yes,
it was on
music.
It was on
Cloud9
It was the double
versus Envy on
detain.
Ascent.
Yeah, Ascent, and they played the Monty texted me and he was like, he's like, look at this, and like, he said he like pulled up the clown music and like sent it to the producers and like had them chop it up, and I was like, this is just gold. Like, it is just.
It was
the Twitter
such
account
an
was good
absolute
too.
clown round as well.
Yeah, it was.
The Twitter account was good.
Yeah, the Twitter account had memes as well. They were posting memes, and we had that one where Envy were like, holding up Split in like the pool or whatever, and then the other maps were like drowning because really only were good on Split. They had responded to Dignitas about the rounds thing as well, where it's like Dignitas had like 2 fingers for like scissors, and then the Pop Flash or Flashpoint rather, their Twitter account was like, wow, if you had 1 more finger, that was the amount of rounds you got against Sentinels. It's just like fire stuff like that. It was just like great memes overall. So I really just enjoyed the entire atmosphere, not only the broadcast, but everything just came together.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like easier for the TO to work with teams like that when like it is kind of a league, just kind of like Flashpoint, Pop Flash, where the teams kind of have some stake in it, right? The teams have all come together and started this thing. So to have that kind of camaraderie and like there's like longevity in it for you, it's a little bit easier to just kind of roast and toast on social.
Also,
the personal player pieces. Yeah.
Sorry, go on,
Were you
Wyatt.
about to say the same thing, Johnny? The personal player videos with their stories.
Yes, Wyatt.
Stole your point. Yes, dude. Yeah, those were so good. Those were really enjoyable and much needed in the scene as well.
Yeah.
Just to add on to giving the players.
It gives you an insight on who these players are.
Yeah, definitely. And they really went in depth on like specific players' backgrounds as well. They talked to people that were outside of the Valorant scene.
You say Wolf, right? Was in the Storm one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Wolf has watched any Valorant, but he is very knowledgeable about Heroes of the Storm because he casted it for years in the past and saw some.
You could literally tell me anything about Heroes of the Storm. You could tell me it's 10v10 and I would have believed you. I've never seen
have no idea.
I've never seen it.
No idea.
Not a clue. It's okay though. I think Johnny was an observer for Heroes of the Storm.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, you were.
One of my first, that's how I first met Wolf. I first met Wolf in Prague, Czech Republic, or actually it was Katowice. I can't remember. But I met him in a European country, and I was like Poland. 19 or 18 at the time.
That's Poland.
Yeah, I said 2 different countries, so I don't know which one it was because we were at different events.
Where did I meet
But that's
you,
when
Johnny?
I met Wolf. So that was like 2014 or 15. I first met Wolf, and then we happened to work on Overwatch together like 3-4 years later. So I don't
remember meeting
some good
Johnny.
memories with Wolf.
I remember tweeting Johnny nonsense before Owl came out, and me and Maven were doing COD, and we were like, "Oh, that Reinforced guy is kind of cool." And we debated whether he named himself after the character because we thought that would be incredibly lame.
I first met you in like 2016 at E-League when you were trying to get into.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? I tried to get in. I was already casting it. I was already doing it. I don't know if I was getting into it.
That was like your first event, I think.
Yeah, because I was on TV. It was pretty dope. I got the meme. I got the meme ZP on TV.
I also want to say for Pop Flash, they had a great utilization of the talent. Yeah. Like they picked people that are very in depth with the scene, people like DDK. And, maybe you can't say that it's the best talent available if Sean wasn't there, considering that Sean seems like he's the most knowledgeable person about the entire scene at the moment, or about the game, rather, not about the entire scene. But in terms of like the people they chose for the analyst desk as well, getting Potter and Maui, who have an in-depth background of a lot of the former CS people as well, and have worked on Flashpoint where like Team August and FPX were playing in the past with a lot of those guys, I think was really thought through. It wasn't just a random selection of like, who should we get to work for us? Just random people. It was everybody had like a thought behind them, and they interchanged the talent duos as well in quite nice, refreshing ways too.
Yeah, because they could have easily just said, "Oh, let's just get the people who worked the last one, right?" And just like put them in. But I feel like, especially the desk, hit a really nice point of like giving me enough of like explaining the game, but also giving me enough of like context of overall of like the teams and the players, and really kind of hitting that home, like giving you a reason to care outside of I just like watching high level Valorant, right?
Yeah. I think that's what the shoulder content is so good at as well, right? Like, also the post-game interviews were enormous for that as well.
Yeah.
Sam's interview was funny as fuck. Also because Sam is just like, he's
great.
Like, on the border between, like, everything he says could be cringe humor or could just be straight fire. You never quite know what it's going to be. But either way, it was just hilarious to watch him go out. Like, I can't even remember what he was saying, but I was pissing myself laughing at the time.
I also think if there's somebody who kind of understands like that borderline between cringe and just piss funny humor, it's probably Doa. Like Doa kind of straddles that line as well. Where like Doa can make some jokes and you're like, Doa, that's just a boomer joke. But then Doa makes some jokes and you're actually just on the floor.
Yeah.
I thought he did really nice as a host. I love listening to Riv cast. Like I think Riv just kind of, he always brings it. I thought they did, like we mentioned, just a really nice job picking a really well balanced, just kind of talent pool overall. Yeah. Let's talk about the actual games. Dig knocks TSM out of groups. So we kind of talked about some with the interview and whatnot. I think this was a bit of a shock. I remember watching the show, and I think the only one who ended up picking Dig was Lex. I think Lex kind of had an idea of.
I think he picked them both times as well, which is crazy.
We talked about this last episode about how Dig beat them early in the morning, and TSM just weren't awake. So,
but that was the first time they played against TSM, and they also played them the second time. And what I find to be really interesting is that TSM definitely played badly the first time, and Dignitas rolled them. They beat them 2-0 really easy. But then Dig got slaughtered against Cloud9. Slaughtered. They lost 1-13 and 7-13 against a C9 team that was just running at them and mowing them down. And at that point,
it's a tragic score.
It really is. And at that point, you're like, okay, TSM are going to have woken up a little bit because it's later on in the groups. They've already played against Dignitas, so they know what their style is. And Dignitas' confidence is going to be shaken because they're a brand new team and they've just been rolled by Cloud9. So surely they're not going to be able to do it again. They just do it again.
Yeah. What was most interesting to me about Dignitas was how much Shanks was influencing the pace that they were playing the game at, because he was just ruthlessly aggressive and never knew when to turn it off. But against TSM, he was not getting punished. And that, I mean, to be fair as well, that Cloud9 game was 1 in a million. We've never seen Cloud9, all 5 players, just popping the fuck off in one game. We've never seen Shinobi and Vice just going ham at the same time as Tens, Mitch, and Relics. It was just ridiculous.
We're not getting on the Shinobi train as it happened. Dude, just like, he's finally getting good, you know? And then after that, we're like, oh.
Quickly disembarked from the Shinobi train.
If you were watching Josh's Twitter, it was like he was describing 2 completely different teams, like within like a 24-hour period. He was like up here in terms of like height, and then like it started to just trickle down, and then the last few tweets were just kind of like the slope, just like you could see their performance through Twitter.
Yeah.
TSM though historically have not done well in any group stages, but this was the first time a group stage was of a tournament where there were only the 8 best teams in NA. In the previous groups, for instance, if you look back to the FaZe Clan tournament, not a lot of people remember this. They remember that first game where they lost a map to Bloom, who were unknown at the time. Now they're Space Station Gaming. They're like Roka popping off, whatever. They lost a map, close game. It gave Bloom a bunch of hype. And then TSM, they did make it out of the group, but they also lost to Cloud9 early in that tournament, 2-1 as well, which is a forgotten point. They've just never particularly fared well in the group stages. And I think that just the fact that this tournament had 8 teams and they were just the best teams was pretty significant. They always seem slow to start for whatever reason. I also think that they match up really poorly against teams that also have sick opping Jets who are fearless, because their worst matchup, aside from obviously Sentinels are really good, but for totally different reasons, though overall, that matchup has been fairly close, with the Sentinels winning just 1 more game, I believe. But they've actually lost to Cloud9 a considerable number of times, especially for how much lower we would rank Cloud9 in NA compared to TSM. And now it was a similar story against Dig, where they just have this opping Jett popping off. And it's interesting that it's those 2 teams that they were unable to counter. And I do think it is a very key point, the fact that Dignitas were able to win a second time, and they were so dependent on Shanks not getting caught out with his style, because against Cloud9 and against Sentinels especially, And then later against Envy, he was just getting caught on his pushes constantly. But against TSM, he was fine. And he was making plays throughout all the 4 maps that they played.
Yeah. They really did a bad job of punishing Shanks, I think. And you have to. When you are playing against a player that is that cocky, you have to be able to punish them when they go for stupid kind of plays. Otherwise, their confidence increases. They continue to go for those aggressive plays. They continue to hit their shots. Whereas you saw Shanks, I mean, Shanks wildly oscillated throughout this tournament. He was basically either top fragging or bottom fragging. There were only I believe it was the minority of games where he was just putting up a middling performance. He was normally at one end of the spectrum. And then the stats only tell you so much, but when you look at the guy's play, he's going for just mental stuff that other pros do not go for because they know they will get punished for it. And this would be really cool if the guy was unbelievably good, but he's not. He's just good. He's just a very good AWPer. And you can't get away with that stuff unless you are like Wardell level talented. And even then, Wardell doesn't play that mentally. He still has some idea of when he's going to get punished.
I do think Shanks is incredibly talented, though. I could definitely see him as a top AWPer in NA, but it's just going to be down to how quickly Dignitas are able to rein him back, because he was holding them back from winning a considerable amount of rounds just by going down. Either he would push too far up on defense and just get caught out alone trying to hold some crazy tight close angle, or there were many times he would get the first kill and just immediately re-peek, but then he would get traded because you're playing Sentinels and they're gonna kill you. But I think that regardless of all of that, he was incredibly talented in terms of his aim and his ability to get kills. He's just a very mechanically skilled player, but I think Dignitas, they're just going to have to rein him back. And if they do, I think they have a really well-rounded roster. And also, I was talking to Jake about this, and he made a nice point, which is that he would much rather play with an upcoming player who is unbelievably cocky and so confident in their skill set that he'll have to rein them back as a leader versus getting some talented guy who can pop off and ranked in pugs, but crumbles against the top competition, and you have to build his confidence up over time, that it'll be an easier task for Dignitas to just get him to stop going for these re-peaks. Just take the one kill and back off. Don't make these close angle holds
that was
all the time.
What happened with Sinatra, right? It's like he was that cocky player.
Absolutely.
Similar to Shanks in one regard. And then Krusty, the coach of the San Francisco Shock, essentially, took the reins of Sinatra and like reined him in and actually added some fundamental as the flex comes in from some. I love to see it.
I love it. He's so funny.
It's so good. But that was what happened with Sinatra, because everyone were talking about the potential of Sinatra. And I, at the time, I honestly, and I was wrong about this, I didn't think like Sinatra would be able to make that big shift from, his personality back then when he was a streamer to this really fleshed out leader for the San Francisco Shock. But obviously, Krusty and Sinatra proved me wrong and made it happen. And that's what we're seeing now with Shanks as well, is that like these really big personalities. And if you watched any of his stream clips, I mean, by God, the man has energy, right? So if you can really utilize this and like rein it in and really hone this young player and like really make him into a big star, they could make it happen. Also, didn't have a ton of practice with him leading into the tournament. I think they said they barely practiced split at all. And like, they practice mostly Ascent and Bind, I think they said. Could be wrong on that one. Yeah. Maybe a Haven.
Still a good showing,
that makes sense, judging by how they played as well. Yeah, it was a good showing. It was a good showing from Dignitas. They have a lot of potential. Whether they want to go with Shanks or whether they want to pick somebody else up, either way, this is a team with a lot of promise. I'm still a little concerned about Shanks just because you look at his stream and he seems like a very immature kind of person. Not that that's impossible to deal with. That's a kind of a common thing with very young, talented players, but it's like to an extreme level where you're going to need somebody to really take on that mentor role for him.
Like his big brother.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally playing with his big brother. But a lot of the time, I don't know. I mean, that depends on what your brother dynamic really is. I know a lot of people that don't respect their brother at all, and some people that worship them. So that's a very a thing that you would never be able to really know.
That is a team. I did see Def actually tweet something, maybe today or I don't know, but he tweeted something about looking for a coach, or that they don't have a coach, something along those lines. So that could always be the the role that they need, the outside influence.
But also, Def and Sam seem like very mature, calculated people to be able to take somebody like Shanks and help him work on those kind of things too. Right, like this seems like a team that's pretty measured outside of Shanks, who seems like a crazy motherfucker.
Yeah.
So,
but every
if you
team
have
needs a crazy motherfucker, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is like this is what all of his Twitch clips are
that's
like.
all of them. Yeah.
Every single one is just him, just I don't know, trying to replicate the Twitch clips he's seen in other places. I don't know.
Dude, he went from 8 viewers to 1,000 in a month on Twitch. Like his Twitch stream just exploded.
Just shirtless and vibing.
More than vibing, bro. Like he's popping off. He's popping off. I think he's a bit of an entertainer. I don't think you should read into it too much. You know, obviously,
sure.
You know, maybe some of that translates to the Scrim environment, but I think he's just an entertainer and loves to have fun. So that's what I saw with him.
That could definitely be.
Yeah, let's talk about Gen.G and Immortals. Gen.G, they go out in round 1, I believe. They lose in round 1, and then they lose in the losers of round 1.
Yeah.
And then Immortals, they make it to the lower final in the group B.
Can we just scrap Immortals? Like, as in, like, we don't have to read into this performance at all, because, like, obviously what happened to Dice's internet was very unfortunate, and then, you know, Bonnie couldn't really replicate it at all.
I totally agree. Well, I mean, I think that Immortals, in my opinion, I know that I've talked with you, Wyatt, and you disagree, but I think that they were set up to make the finals. Like, maybe not make the finals. I don't know whether they would have been able to beat Cloud9, but I think Immortals were definitely set to be that envy team that had the potential to do the same kind of thing here. If Dicey's internet had actually worked, I think they would have won that head-to-head match against.
I don't know. To me, it just depends on the maps that got picked in that.
Bonnie didn't he get like 3 frags on split against Envy?
Yeah.
If you had Dicey, you get more than 3 frags.
Well, yes,
legitimately a very good player.
Yes, of course. But I do still think Envy have a great chance of winning that match.
That's split. It's split. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, split is like a guarantee to Envy, and bind is a guarantee for Immortals. So it comes down to like Ascent or Haven as the third map and who you have favored there.
I think it's really close, though. At the end of the day, we can, you know, go back on how close or if one team has a slight ad, but it would have been really close. But I mean, there's not really much sense in dissecting this for the next 30 minutes and mauling over Immortals' potential theoretical results. But
anytime as well you lose to the finals, like who wins the entire thing and who gets second, it can't be that. And considering the situation they were in, it couldn't have been. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting to talk about Gen.G and how strong that Group A was. That they had to put up against. They were playing the, you know, newly formed on fire Dignitas, TSM, who they have never beat TSM in a BO3. This is the 4th time they've lost a BO3 to TSM, and it was actually the closest loss they've had against them. So they've never beat TSM. TSM is always the team that knocks them out of every single tournament in like the semis, and then they're also going up against Cloud9, who are just on fire as well. They just made all these good changes to me. I like all the changes they made quite a bit. And because of that, they were just playing well. And Gen.G went up against 3 of the best teams in the tournament early. And Gen.G didn't look to be all that good at the moment in this tournament.
Yeah, and that's my issue with it. That's why I think it was a very disappointing tournament for Gen.G, because even though you can rationalize it by saying, oh, they hit an on-fire Cloud9 and a TSM, so they had a tough group, when you dig into the kind of details of how they lost that game 2-1 to Cloud9, I mean, the maps that they lost, they put up 5 and then 6 rounds. Like, they were not close to being able to beat C9. And when it comes to bind, Gen.G should be winning that, in my opinion. Like,
they definitely. Should be. Yeah, they should be.
Ascent is a great map for Cloud9. And Ascent, they were able to frag. You know, the team is playing pretty well. Tens drops 23 for 13. You know, it's a classic kind of Ascent performance where the players are playing pretty well. But then you look at Bind and you're like, come on, Gen.G, how the fuck do you manage to not put up a single round on attack? Not one round on attack on Bind. That's something's very wrong there from Gen.G. And I think Hwin was pretty up and down. They seemed like they were trying to play a bit more of a loose style. For example, on Bind, they were playing a different composition to what they normally do. Normally, Effie's is on the Sage, and they have Hwyn on the Sova. This time they went Sageless, and Hwyn was playing Jett, and Hwyn AWPing on Jett went 8 and 14,
and they
weren't really able to have any of their strategic base that they normally rely on.
I am so sick of just the amount of Phoenix gameplay that is going on in NA. It's out of control. It's actually out of control. I don't know what parasite has entered the mind of these duelists that is convincing them all to play Phoenix is the answer, not Raze. I don't understand. I would have much preferred to see GMD as well on Raze on this. Phoenix, man, it was just getting nothing done on attack. But I think a key factor as well with Gen.G is I am placing them lower in my mind on the rankings as these past couple tournaments have unfolded. Because in the previous one, in the FaZe Invitational as well, they came in 4th, but it was more of a matter of a good bracket. I mean, they lost to Immortals twice in that. I mean, they kind of got crushed by Immortals in the last BO3 as well. And then in this, they can't make it out of groups. They're definitely slipping in the rankings a bit. Where I had them rated very highly a few weeks ago. Now, not as much promise from these past 2 events.
In my opinion, though, it's one of those. I know if Bren was here, he'd be the one saying this because he always says this. He's like, when a team makes changes, they have to get better before they get. No, they have to get worse before they get better. Yeah. They have to get better before they get worse.
Yeah. Bren is a big proponent by adding better players will make you worse for a bit, or trying to improve makes you worse for a bit.
Which can occasionally happen, but I think this was goes like some way to explaining Gen.G here, because they have been getting slapped by the top teams because they're so readable. Like they previously had such a tactical, strategic style that they were all going to execute, and you knew that it wasn't a fake. You knew that there wasn't a default going on. As soon as they send in that first real concrete piece of utility, there's going to be a big execute on your bomb site. That was the way that Gen.G played. And that wasn't really getting the results for them against the top teams. Like, it was getting them pretty deep in tournaments. It got them the occasional tournament win, like one at the very beginning of the scene and one, I don't know, like halfway through, something like that.
Pulse,
some medium-sized tournament. Pulse. But apart from that, it wasn't really cutting the mustard. So I think Gen.G in this tournament decided to play a bit more loose, to play Hwyn on the Jett full time, to play the Phoenix, to see if they could hang with the big boys. And it didn't work. Go back to playing the strategic style, I think. You can loosen it up a little bit, but you don't have to change your comp. You just play it some more defaults rather than executes, or build out your playbook to become more unpredictable.
Yeah, I think what is interesting as well, now that we're approaching a time where there are going to be these significant updates, like the patch we were talking about earlier, and they will influence the teams, and there will be teams that it influences more positively. And I think Gen.G could be one of the teams, because GMD's breach was already out of control previous to these breach buffs. So if he's just going to be, I could see Gen.G just having him on 24/7 breach post this patch, and that alone could significantly change the dynamic of the team and just be a straight upgrade, because his highest output has always been his breach games.
Yeah, let's talk about Cloud9 real quick. That they look just different, but then the same at some points. Where just kind of the inconsistencies plague them towards the end. But they do end up looking, I think the first one against, the series early on, that's when you were tweeting like crazy, Josh, that they looked good.
I'm trying to find
Josh was tweeting so much about
Josh
Cloud9
was tweeting
this entire tournament.
Absolutely
40 tweets straight about Cloud9 early.
Yeah, but the reason for that is that I feel like if you're in a position where you're any kind of public figure, and you're tweeting about players being bad, you have to also give them credit when they play well, right? Like, it would be really unfair of me to tweet constantly about Shinobi being a bottom feeder, and then the game where he pops off and starts looking good, it would be like super shitty for me to just be like, well, I don't think you can do it again. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I have to accept that he played really well in that game, and accept it for what it is, which was an unbelievable performance. I'm putting the tweet in the chat, which was, I mean, it's just nuts. Like, it makes no sense. It was that one series where Shinobi, and the rest of the team as well, by the way, this wasn't just Shinobi. It was also Mitch had a really good performance on the Jett, like a sick performance on the Jett. And then Vice is popping the fuck off as well. But I mean, look, like, this isn't just stats as well. You look at the actual shots that Shinobi was hitting. He has never hit shots like that before in Valorant.
I was just going back to find those clips the other day, and watching them the second time, it just even less does it look like you're watching the same player. It looks like his mouse control, his aim was just so good in that series. And what he did say was pretty interesting about that as well. Not just that you inspired him to hit DM for 2 weeks straight. Not that part, but I think if you hit the more replies, Kurt, I think he said something more, didn't he? Just about how.
I think he said.
Yeah, basically, this was something that we were talking about while we were watching it. That they were playing such a loose style, and the players were going for their own plays. They all looked so confident that he could just focus on what was in front of him on the monitor, not like the macro map in-game leader view. He was just popping off. But that was a ridiculous game from Cloud9 all around. And I love the changes that they made to their agents as well. I think it was very intelligent.
But the problem is that they didn't keep it up over the course of the tournament. Like this was, even though Cloud9 looked pretty good in this tournament and they make a deep run, what did they finish? Third overall?
Third,
the players weren't popping off the entire time. They cooled off. They had like a hot beginning and then they cooled off. And they ended up being pretty much the same kind of C9 as we've seen, where you had Tens doing well, Midge putting up okay numbers or relics, and then everybody else was pretty absent.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the tournament, I think we praised Vice on his Cypher, specifically because of his flanks. Like, he got value without really needing any utility. And if you can manage to get like a frag on a flank, a Cypher, that just changes up the defense so much. So that was obviously something we liked. But then, like, Cloud9 were so inconsistent this entire tournament. Like, I'm just thinking back to the tournament now. Like, Relics, you know, we often praise his Omen, but, like, sometimes he just wouldn't get any impact whatsoever with the paranoia. And I think that showed on Split sometimes. And then you would have, like, Mitch, who, like, would play Killjoy. But I'm like, you're not getting a ton of value from Killjoy. Like, you're bumping your numbers because of your fragging potential and, like, you're winning aim duels and stuff. So, like, it feels like this Cloud9 team could be even better if they just made some slight adaptations and, like, got more value from the Roman, got more value from Mitch, perhaps playing a different hero, or agent, sorry. And also, like, some of these rounds were just, like, woeful. where we're just, like, we saw Killjoy ultimates come in, and it was just chaos all over the place, and Cloud9 looked lost. And some of the rotations that were called as well, where they took, like, tellies, or, like, rotating around the map, and they just failed to plant with, like, a second remaining or something.
That happened.
It happened multiple times in, like, every series. And it was so frustrating to watch. So I can't help but feel like Cloud9 overall had a pretty good tournament, but they show that they have the potential to be even better than they are. So that's actually a positive note, right? Like, you had a good performance, but if you actually step up and consistently bring good rounds all the time, I think Cloud9 could be even better.
Yeah, it's just trying to captivate more of what went right and trying to incorporate that more instead of kind of going back to
the problem, though. That all kind of makes sense, but the problem is, in my opinion, that their good performances, the places where they looked electric, was just down to fragging.
When people were just fragging out.
Yeah, they were just popping out of control.
I don't think that's necessarily true. You got to give them a lot of credit for how well they play on Ascent. Specifically, Ascent attack, they are really good on that map.
Well,
oh my God,
kind of, except that they played against Envy and they put together 2 attacking rounds the first time around, and they were horseshit at it, and then they learned how to attack the next time. Oh wait, am I mixing up the teams? Were they really good one time and then bad the other? Yeah, the first time they played, they
wrecked them on attack.
They only put 2 attacks together.
Was
the first time they played against Envy?
Was it the second one they put up the attack?
The second time they played, they put together 10 attacking rounds.
Yeah.
So
you can't just look at the one map and say that they aren't good at it, though, because the rest of the Ascent games they played in the tournament were all really good.
Yes. Yeah, the other ones were pretty good. But I also want to say, though, that in terms of them cooling off down towards the rest of the tournament, the entirety of Cloud9, other than Tens, went negative over the course of their 3 playoff games. So once they got out of groups, they all went negative. Everybody went negative in terms of their KD. It was only Tens that went positive, and he went plus 46 over 3 series. I don't mean that he got 46 frags. I mean, he got 46 more frags than he got deaths over the course of those 3 series, and everyone else was negative. So this went back to just being classic old C9, where none of them were really fragging. And I don't know whether they were just thinking too much about the game. Maybe it was like the Shinobi problem, where they were just thinking themselves to death and not concentrating on their aim or something. But they just looked significantly worse as they progressed into the playoff groups. And so to me, it kind of does come down to just capturing that magic of having big performances from Mitch, from Vice, from Relics consistently.
Yeah, you probably just need it once in a match like this for it to become a more regular thing. Like doing it against like a top team or like in a semis, right? Like having those like big fragging performances. I think doing them in groups is like is fine, right? But I don't know if that really builds kind of any confidence for the rest of time. I think it needs to happen probably in like a semis or a lower finals or something along those lines.
I would almost like to see Mitch just pretty much stay on Jett the whole time at this point, honestly. I hate, especially, I really dislike the maps where he was going Raze. I didn't think that was doing
his Raze isn't good.
Yeah, it was not bringing any additional impact to the team. He was clearly having the most impact on Jett, and then I think that that's probably the best dynamic they can create on the team, is him being the opping Jett and let TenZ just play Reyna, which is designed to be a carry agent if you're out of control with rifling, which TenZ is. And I think that dynamic of the two duelists is the best that they're going to get in terms of getting frags on the board, and then try to leave relics on Omen, which is, regardless of Johnny did make valid points about the negatives of his Omen play, but his Omen is still his best agent. Yeah. And then if Vice can keep, it's hard to say, right? Because this is the first tournament that Vice actually even like looked pretty good. If he can keep that level, maybe. I mean, the thing is, these were good changes because I think that they were squeezing just a bit more out of their players in terms of impact than they would have were they running the same, just Sage, Mitch, whatever before, where they were getting next to no impact. Mitch was having some great moments on Jett. I think that they should just try to grind him out, improving his skill on that, and him and TenZ just try to get as many frags as they can, and try to play around that. But at the end of the day, they're suffering from the same problems that they had before in the games they lost, which is that the other 4 players on the team just do not frag hard. It's a very simple, plain problem, but it is the truth.
They don't kill enough people. Yeah, that would potentially be a bit of an issue moving forward. Let's talk about Sentinels versus Envy, the finals of the event. Envy ends up making the finals. They kind of go on a little bit of a run. It's a great weekend for just the Envy organization, by the way. They make the finals of this. They win the CDL championship. They get Post Malone. Pretty solid weekend for Envy. I don't know where this making the finals ranks, considering on how the finals went. Probably below Post Malone. Post Malone and winning the Call of Duty championship for like $1.5 million.
I think they won the Rocket League. I think they won some Rocket League tournament as well, so it's probably the 4th most important thing that happened that week.
Yeah, probably
4th most.
But we can talk about the just the finals in general and just how it goes.
Yeah, it was a good performance from Envy. It was a good step up from them, in terms of like actually making it to a big finals, being able to compete with teams, that kind of stuff. But they kind of got, outside of the games against Cloud9, they did kind of get gifted the route there. Like, if they were going to make it deep in the tournament, it had to be this one. They had the best group draw you could possibly ask for, and then they played against Immortals when Dicey's internet died. So like, your direct rival's best player's internet dies to gift you a spot into the playoffs. But they did make the most of it once they actually got there, being able to adapt in that series and beat C9 after they lost to them and be able to come back. The win over Dignitas, like, these are all really positive results for Envy.
Yeah, it was all good. I think what impressed me the most is the dynamic of Caboose and FNS and how much of those two guys have stepped up for the team. Because now, Caboose in this tournament, he looked like an unreal entryer. He was one of the, really, to me, the only 2, maybe Phoenix in NA that can actually effectively entry on Phoenix. And his aim was just ridiculous the whole weekend. His Raze is solid too. But his entering just overall, he was so good. And then FNS stepped up massively on the Cypher. So you have a sick entryer and then FNS stepping up. He's going to be there in the late rounds post-plant. And that little dynamic just added a much larger amount of consistency to the team.
This was insane.
It was clean.
I mean, this clip was just out of control. But
where has this Caboose been for like all of their previous tournaments, though? Because
I don't know.
Caboose has looked like their third best player behind Calypso and Mummy.
Right.
And Calypso and Mummy kind of took a step down in this tournament, and Caboose stepped the fuck up. So I'm kind of wondering whether this is going to be consistent, because the guy just kind of popped out of control.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
He was crazy.
Mummy and Caboose, or Mummy and Calypso still looked really good, though. So if you have those 4 guys just playing at this level, that's actually a sick team.
I mean, when you have teams like this scrambling as well in your region, where you have like Immortals, obviously you couldn't play with Dicey, and then Cloud9 are struggling with some of their roles in the team as well. And then you have Dignitas, who are just now starting to play with Shanks as well. But then you have Mume on Envy, who's like an established op Jett on this team, which is so helpful in this meta particular, right? So it felt like Envy had like a good foundation going into this tournament, and that really helped when other teams in this region really started to crumble. So I think that carried a long way in this tournament. Because, like, who would you rather have? Would you rather have Mitch, or would you want to have Mumai?
Okay, I mean, well, all right. Yeah, I mean, I don't care who you're saying next.
So that helps in a Jett op meta.
Could be anyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Bren. I'll take him.
Bren, oh, come on, man.
Come on.
Let him live, dude.
Oh
There's no way you want the Brenji.
At the same time, though, the story coming out of this
Jett.
grand finals is not really that Envy were good. It was that Sentinels are definitely the best team in North America.
Yes.
I mean, like, there's just no
it's not even
contest.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the other
destruction.
side of the finals. Yeah, Sentinels just they just pounded. Envy had the great story, like we mentioned, going into the finals, but the finals was just a slaughtering. I mean, Sinatra. I mean, I was thinking, man, I miss him in Overwatch League. That I'm watching him in Valorant. I was like, dude, he's just farming. Like he is. I think he's kind of even surpassed like my expectations of him going into Valorant. Like I thought he would be like a.
Yeah, he has for me.
I thought he would be like a nice player in Valorant, like really good addition to a team, right? He's like looking at like, you know, superstar cornerstone of a team levels of play, right?
Yeah, there is no way that I expected this of him. And for the people that did, I kind of question whether that was an emotional reaction, you know? Like, just because someone is good in one game, it almost never translates to being the best in another game that is very different. I can't really think of examples where someone goes from being at the top level of one esport to being at the top level. And I don't just mean like top 10 teams or something. I mean immediately like arguably the best player in the region.
I was going to say Psalm is a pretty good candidate, but
completely different type of game. But the MVP of the Call of Duty League this year was his first year playing competitive Call of Duty, and he was the Halo World Champion last year.
Oh shit, really?
And then decided to just bounce. He joined this team, and he had one bad event, and then he was just dominant the rest of the way, and he was the MVP.
That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty similar comparison. Because I don't think it's really happened that much in the past. I might be completely wrong here, but all of the examples I can think of previously were people that hopped from one game to another and then were like middle of the pack at the pro level. They didn't just like come in and dominate. Sinatra is making an argument for being the best player in North America. Now, I think most people would still give that to Tens. Some arguments maybe for Wardell or something like that. But the amount of impact Sinatra has is absurd. It's crazy what he does for Sentinels.
Yeah, his level, he is just what is impressive to me about it the most is that he might be, actually not might be, he is the most selfless entryer in NA right now. Especially like if you see him play Raze,
I think.
In the game, maybe, yeah. He has no regard for his life on a push whatsoever. He will do exactly what he needs to do to set up Sick, who is almost always a second man, if not Dapper, coming in to get the trades. And he is fully prepared to just draw all the eyes to him and die every time. He'll just go into bomb sites and jump around on Raze and not even try to shoot people. But he's just setting up Sick and Dapper constantly. to look
He
like the
knows his
star
aim is
players getting the
sick, right?
frags. What was that?
He knows his aim is nuts. Like he rounds a corner and like tries entry for some of those guys. Like he's gonna at least get somebody like at worst like weak, like basically dead.
Well, that's the thing. He plays so selflessly, yet he still has god tier star performances where he's fragging out of control, and he's playing exclusively to set up his teammates coming in after him to get the kills. But he'll just pop off and kill everyone anyway. It's unreal.
In the finals across the 3 maps, he drops the most kills on the team with 59, but then he also has 27 assists with a plus 13.
Yeah, it's the assists that kind of tell you the story of Sinatra as well.
Right.
Because really, he should the style of play that he has, a lesser player would just be getting those assists, and that would still be great. By the way, the amount of space that he creates and the fact that he sets his team up for those kills is still really good. But when you play that well, and let me just recite some stats from his Pop Flash performance, man. He was averaging every single round, he was doing 160 damage. So that's more than one player's worth of damage every single round, playing like this, where he just runs in. And then, I mean, to be fair, he plays like that kind of style when he's playing the Phoenix. He sometimes plays a little slower, like when he's playing the Sova, and the Raze is like a tad bit slower than the Phoenix, maybe, but it's still pretty fast. But his KD is at 1.22, and he is just inting. I mean that in the most positive sense as well, where he is just running in, like intentionally just making up a bunch of space, but he still hits so many shots. He's just gunning people down. It's absurd.
Also,
it's sick to see.
His Phoenix is just so good. So good. And he only plays it on one map, interestingly enough, all you NA Phoenixes who just can't switch off of it. He's the absolute best Phoenix by far and plays it only on Bind, where he is just dominant on B.
Yeah, it's I think Sentinels clearly the best team in NA. I think Sinatra definitely trending towards one of, if not the best player in NA. Quickly before we do power rankings, I know you wanted to touch on it, Josh. The T1 and Steel. You wanted to bring this up, and if they do beat him.
Because Steel is a player that is like really famous in the CSGO scene, involved in the iBuyPower match fixing scandal, but also just famous for his role as a top level IGL. Yeah. He's very famous for his role as a top level IGL in North America, which is a region that normally doesn't have very good IGLs, or at least historically in CS hasn't. And he's like he brings a lot of structure to a team, at least as far as I'm aware. That's kind of the story behind Steel. And T1 is a team that has a ton of his old teammates on them from the iBuyPower days, and they really need an IGL. And so Steel has been linked after this report came out that confirmed he was, or maybe actually, it wasn't a report. I think he said that he's moving to Valorant.
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
And there's reports that connect him to T1 and 100 Thieves. And 100 Thieves already have Nitro, he's an IGL, he's an AWPer, that kind of stuff. They've got Hiko on there as well. But I feel like T1 just needs Steel. I can't think of another player that would fit their team more perfectly than Steel.
So I haven't watched Steel's stream actually to see what agents he actually plays. But I mean, I still feel like the agent pool of T1 is a bit of a problem. And obviously they changed it up quite a lot. And like realistically, if Steel would be added to T1, he would have to take over for EU. Is that how you pronounce it? EU?
Yeah.
On the smoker role. So it's like, depends on if Steel can also fill the shoes of like a Brim and an Omen player, because I feel like T1 still needs like a Jett player, and that was why Skadoodle got the quote-unquote boot, or whatever it now is. A bunch of drama on the Valorant competitive Reddit all week, really, about why Skadoodle was kicked, or if he was kicked at all, or what's going on there. But I still feel like T1, they also need like a proper Jett AWPer, but they also need a shot caller, and it gets really messy with this entire roster.
Start kicking people.
Yeah, and it's like Crashies has been one of the better players on this team, like when he plays Cypher. But at the same time, you want to make room for like a caller and it's very messy when you consider the T1 roster. So I think they have a lot of changes actually moving forward to figure out.
Yeah, an interesting thing I heard actually was that EU joined. Part of the reason they got him is because he's actually in-game leading for them right now, or was in-game leading for them, which is perplexing. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely, Johnny. The agent roles on the team are just a mess. I think Brax and Crashies are both at their best on Cypher, AZK either needs to be on Sage or Smoke. Well, he's not playing Sage anymore because no one will be. So where is AZK going? And please, for the love of God, not onto the opping Jett ever again. I don't want to see that happen ever again. He gave it his best shot, but it's just not the role for him. I'm not trying to rail into him, but that is just not the role for him. He's never been in that role in CS or in Valorant. He's not going to be the star opper. And to expect him to slot into that and just become one is kind of absurd, I think. So you're going to have two guys who are really good on Cypher. What is Steel going to play if he comes in? If he's going to play the Smoke, well, then he's overlapping with AZK. Is he going to be the other duelist? Is Food going to play opping Jett? It's just, that roster is just chaos with the roles, man. It doesn't make any sense at all at this point. And if they need a leader, I don't know what leader right now in the scene. I can't name one who's playing a duelist. I guess Sabrosa, but but that's obviously not the ideal role for an in-game leader, to be a man trying to entry or op on Jett. That team is just a mess in terms of roles.
Yeah, I will say, I hope that they add Steel to this roster because he would be the one to fix it. Like, he would actually sort out the mess. And I actually watched some of his stream the other day, and he just straight up just like, yeah, I think Killjoy is pretty overpowered. And initially I'm like, hold on a second. I just watched Pop Flash and it didn't go too well. And then he's like, yeah, I watched some of Pop Flash. Like, the level of play of Killjoy in Pop Flash were just like miserable. Like, people just like completely were garbage on Killjoy. And he truly believes that Killjoy is a really good agent and you can actually make it work, and just like called out all the Killjoys in NA for being absolute trash in Pop Flash.
The content would be perfect.
I would love it if you got added to this team. Yeah,
that's why we need it, for the content themes. Let's go to the power rankings to wrap things up here. This is the first edition of the Clutcher Kick power rankings. Also, while we start that, Play Valorant's tweeted out. We have to get through the power rankings pretty quick, but that what they thought was a map bug for Omen teleporting past the spawn barriers is actually just an issue with Omen overall. So he is being disabled until they have a real fix.
Oh shit!
Which they are hopeful will be tomorrow. Cool. Some of the replies to the tweet is saying that Sage can do it as well. So not sure how that'll all
just playing into the remove Sage permanently.
Well, yeah. Somebody was like, Sage can do it too, but then somebody replied to that and said, "Don't worry, nobody's gonna play her."
Right. I'm afraid we don't have the fancy Solomon way of making the power rankings like we do in Overwatch, but I cobbled together this, and I'm expecting this to just be a shit fest anyway, because I mean, we're trying to make a world rankings and the LAN events are not even on the horizon. They're just miles away.
We have 12 minutes. Wyatt has the Bible on the table.
Yeah,
ready to go.
Let Wyatt
smash it out.
Am I just doing the official rank? Well,
and we critique
you. Make that bigger. I actually can't see.
And we're just gonna insult your picks.
So, it's a straight up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, there's a 10. All of the teams are sat in the 10 point at the moment.
Okay. Where is the Chengdu zone?
There is a Chengdu zone at the bottom if you just drag them off the table.
If you want to drag them off, you're okay to do that.
So should I just give mine and then I'll let you guys react? Is that how this is going to work? Okay. I'll start with number 1. I think that's maybe here. Number 1, G2.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you there. I think that I've been kind of puzzling over in my head whether Sentinels would be able to do the same kind of things that they do against European teams, and I don't think they would be able to. I think the level of
simp. I take the other stance.
Really? You think Sentinels are better than G2?
I don't have a strong opinion. I just wanted to say something for the NA boys.
Well, I almost feel like you kind of have to have them like tied for first, in the sense that we can't see them play. You really just don't have a good idea. Like, I guess you're almost just kind of picking off of like what you believe, like stylistically, individually, will like end up winning out, right? Where I guess if you it's just kind of down to your opinion on just the style of play of the game, and I guess also the level of play in NA versus level of play in EU.
Yeah, and that's kind of
overall.
That's kind of part of it, right? I think that Sentinels' hyper-aggressive play works really well against the NA teams because a lot of the NA teams don't have a full 5 stack of good riflers. There's always some weak player on one of these NA teams that just can't frag at the same kind of level.
Except Sentinels.
Whereas,
But except Sentinels,
apart from Sentinels. Apart from Sentinels. They're the only team, though. Everybody else has a player that just can't hang at the top level if they're like a top 3 team in North America.
I think
or a top 5 team.
What's so interesting is how similar G2 and Sentinels actually are, even down to individuals. Like Shazam and Artis are just the same thing in 2 different regions to an extent. Like both riflers, both oppers, both in-game leaders, both deep agent pools on duelists. It's pretty interesting how closely the teams sort of match up in terms of the roles.
Mixwell's quite a selfless entryer as well, though he doesn't play the Phoenix and the Raze. He plays it on the Jett, but he'll frequently just dash in for his team. Though I think Sinatra's better on that role.
But if we're going to let G2 be in first, I put Sentinels in second.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, I think that FPX is going to be hunting like mad close to this. I think the team...
Are they third?
I did put FPX number 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. FPX is so well-rounded.
So we're all good so far. Okay, this is where the people are going to start getting upset in the comments.
Do you want to put Liquid here? Because I'm
number 4
hesitating.
I did put Liquid number 4.
All right.
Okay.
I did put Liquid number 4.
I'm just thinking, like, if they went up against some of these North American teams, you know, I think they might struggle. They could play with Scream and like get away with it and one tap their way in and like have some set strats. But
I think that the question is, Johnny, and here's how I try and think about this: is like, who's the next best North American team after Sentinels? I would say it's TSM, right?
I would have said TSM before Pop Flash.
But I would still say TSM. I mean, TSM lost to Dignitas twice. It was the beginning of a group stage. They've been so good for months and stuff. So, like, you still got to put TSM next. So then it comes down to, like, which European teams do you think could beat TSM? And considering TSM are, like, the quintessential not all 5 players frag kind of team, you know, like they're so top heavy in terms of Wardell and Drone doing most of the heavy lifting and Sabrosa having like sometimes really good games, but sometimes being very readable in terms of how he has his aggression, that I think do you think Wardell would basically beast Liquid? Because otherwise Liquid's fragging ability is higher than theirs.
I don't. I think that's the case for a lot of the NA versus EU matchups, is that overall the EU team's fragging in terms of riflers is just greater than the sum of the rifle fragging on the NA teams. I think that's a consistent theme if you run down this list.
I think I would have put TSM above Liquid, but I'll accept this. You know, I forfeit NA twice so far.
You're going to be mauled. But when I give you number 5 is going to send shockwaves, tremors, tectonic plates moving. My number 5 is Bonk.
Jesus!
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
They've had one good tournament.
No. They haven't had one good tournament. They've had one really good tournament, but they've been consistently improving. The level of skill on that team is unbelievably high.
Yes, it is.
I think that we're going to see them in that top 4 EU conversation as a mainstay. It should be now. But I think
this is where I step up for NA. This is where I claim the green card.
Yeah.
This is where I say TSM should be above Bonk.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They play right now.
I
Bonk wins
definitely
2-1.
think that TSM should be above Bonk.
Nope.
I think
he just says no.
I can't agree with Wyatt. I have to agree with the other two. They're not even from America.
Yeah.
I should be fighting for you.
This is where
I
think
personally
Bonk
see how Bonk have such messy team play on a bunch of their maps.
Yes,
right.
Which
Bonk
TSM
are good on
never does
Haven
well against,
and on Split, and outside of that, they don't have a deep map pool.
Yeah, that in terms of matchup, I think Bonk is a great team to beat TSM. TSM struggles against these messy teams that they can't just find these safe entries with Wardell against. It's the chaos teams pushing them, just all firepower, aggressive, that is constant. Those are the teams that upset TSM. It's not Gen.G who are tactically approaching and then Wardell just kills everyone. No. It's C9 doing some random shit. It's Dignitas Shanks jumping around corners. jump peeking Cutler with a Sheriff trying to save. That's what they lose to, okay? They don't lose to tactical. And overall, I think Bonk's firepower is just greater than TSM's. I think that it's a matchup thing, personally. If they played right now, I think Bonk wins 2-1.
That doesn't make you the better team. Just because you can beat TSM doesn't mean that you're the better team. Like if Bonk end up losing, like I think Bonk are pretty close to NIP as well over in Europe. Like they take series either way, or maybe Bonk are improving at a faster rate than NIP are. But I could also see Bonk losing to teams like Cloud9 or Gen.G or stuff like that, just because Bonk themselves are very variable, I think, in how they're going to perform. I just don't think we've seen enough from them to be able to rate them above the second best team in North America.
I have.
Yeah, I would agree with Josh and Johnny. But we can let Wyatt keep going, though.
Yeah. Well, TSM was next, so we are debating those. TSM is next.
We just flipped those. TSM above us. TSM above. TSM up.
TSM, give some love.
I'll allow you to move TSM up. I'm not going to die on the Bonk hill yet.
There we go.
So I still stand firm in my, if they played right now, I think Bonk wins 2-1.
There's a 4-man podcast, Wyatt.
I'll allow it.
You've got outvoted. It's a democracy.
Next, I do have C9.
You have C9.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
See, I don't agree with that.
I would have put Immortals with Dicey.
Based on what?
seems to have thrown Josh.
I got a cover for Bren here. I got a cover for Bren.
That's true. Bren would be very hot.
Immortals would be number 2.
I think NIP would even be able to beat Cloud9, Gen.G, Immortals, like that tier of NA teams. I think NIP would be better than.
Yeah, but now Sage is nerfed. Sage is nerfed. Well,
okay, I will say
that was a team that didn't enjoy playing with Sage. NIP hated playing Sage. They didn't have a set Sage player, so I think that only benefits them. If anything, the Sage nerf is worse for G2, Sentinels, and Liquid. Those are the teams that are going to suffer the most from the Sage nerf. Everybody else should get better. Like FPX should get a lot better. NIP and Bonk should get a lot better.
Is there like a group of teams that you would list in the kind of same exact like tier, like that you don't strongly believe is better than another one? If we can bring it back up, Kurt.
Some of these are really close, and
like if they're that close.
I was gonna say, to be just so you know ahead of time, I do have NIP as the next team, so I do have those two really close.
Why do you think Cloud9 are better than them though? Like everything I've seen from Cloud9 is just shaky. It's just all over the place. I don't think so. When I think about Cloud9, I think about a very loose team that relies on their talent to be able to get them through the matches where they actually win, and they don't have the same level of talent across the board as EU teams. If they play loose against European teams that have much better riflers across the board, I'm not talking about just tens versus their top fragger, but talking about like their bottom fragger versus Shinobi, their second bottom fragger versus Vice or Relics. Like they're gonna dominate the 4 from Cloud9, I think.
Yeah, but Cloud9 has still had really good performances against. I mean, they've been really close to Sentinels. They almost did beat them in the Pop Flash, and they've beaten TSM a few times now. So it's not as if that they're just never going to beat any other team above them or close to them on this top 10 list, right? And further than that, if you're going to talk about shaky teams, we're comparing them to NIP, who have been nothing but disappointing for the past 3 or 4 tournaments. I mean, since they got signed, I thought they were going to do really well, and I don't think that they've performed at the level that I expected or many people expected since they got signed. No. I do still think they're really good, but I don't think that they've shown me anything to convince me that they could be higher on the list or better than Cloud9 at the moment.
All right. I know that the NA fans are going to be mauled if Cloud9 get dropped down even further, so I'll live with it.
All right, who you got next?
Next, I have Gen.G.
You have Gen.G above Immortals, despite the fact that Gen.G have been slipping recently and Immortals have looked better. I feel like these two teams are trending in the opposite direction.
Well, I don't think Immortals are trending in any direction ever. They're trending in all directions at all times. It's astounding. They're somehow getting worse and better at the same time, it seems. I do have... I said this earlier when we were talking about Gen.G, but for me, they're on the clock right now. Like, we've seen enough good performances out of them over the past 2 months that I do still think they have a lot to give. It's the past 2 performances that were not good. So for me personally, if in the next big tournament they perform poorly again, I would significantly drop them down the list. But this depends on how long we're talking about here in the time span, because over the past couple months, they've been way better than Immortals. If you're looking at a longer period of time, or even a month, they've been better than Immortals, month and a half or so. It's really just Immortals were good in FaZe, and that's it. But they did beat Gen.G, but Immortals have failed to beat almost anyone else in the top 10 NA.
That's definitely true.
Part.
They don't beat teams above them, for sure. I mean, Envy aren't even on the list here as well.
Yeah,
I'm Malden.
Second, yeah.
I'm Malden.
I have Envy next.
That's outside the top 10.
That's your excuse.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how far we're going, but I do have Envy next. And that's another, but that's the thing.
I think we keep it at a top 10 here.
Do we want to just do top 10? Yeah, let's just
keep it at a top 10. We'll just add different other teams. That is the 10th place, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, this is on
Mold City.
Some of these guys are hanging on by a thread. Specifically, Gen.G and Immortals are hanging on by a thread. And again, it depends on how long we're looking back, for me. Because if we're talking about, if we're saying we're only counting the last 2 tournaments, you could get Gen.G off the list, for sure. But if we're talking about like the past month and a half, or just the Ignition series, then they deserve a spot on the list.
We need to do this better next time.
Yeah, Immortals, Envy not making the top 10 after getting second just feels feels a little
like, what
what did they do well before then? What was their Matt? What was their great performance before Pop Flash?
But like there has to be some kind of recency. They just get second in a tournament.
It's power rankings.
Like it's like how strong are they right now?
No, it's not right now, though. It's got to have some.
Well, there is some recency bias to it as well.
I was not going super hard. Obviously, I was weighing the current or the most recent stuff harder, but I do think it's at least for me. I was considering what had gone on previously in the Ignition series and its totality.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to do that because Envy didn't play against any other teams that were really
because
that good.
Putting Envy higher,
it just does feel weird. Like maybe they don't deserve a top 10 spot, but seeing a team get second and then not be in the top 10 is quite.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Cloud9, who are a top 10 team in this ranking.
Right, but Cloud9 have gotten second place way more times than Envy have.
Yeah, definitely.
That's true.
And they've beaten TSM way more times than Envy have. So
yeah.
They
for sure
deserve it over them for sure.
This may be the longest episode of any podcast we've ever done.
This is insane.
This is like almost like a
and we just for the viewers know, marathon. We actively cut topics mid-show. Like we cut 4 topics. Sideshow put them down.
That's true.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I don't even know when we started this. I even forgot what episode this is. This may be episode 9 and 10. It's so long, wrapped into one.
Oh my god.
But yeah, no. Thanks for tuning in. Do we know when the next episode will be, Josh?
Probably, it might be in a few weeks' time. I'm not sure because we don't know when the next big tournaments are, like the next big series.
Because I think is the Ignition series done for the year, or for like?
I don't know.
They're gonna launch a new series, but I don't know when.
But you don't know when.
There's a NA, the Pulse Arena. They're running another tournament, I believe, on the 10th, which is a 10K NA tournament. So I'm sure we'll see a decent amount of the top teams.
Yeah,
and then you'll probably see us after that.
Yeah,
because that's when we'll do another show. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you on Clutch or Kick next time when there's another Valorant tournament for us to talk about, or maybe a big balance update that we spend an hour talking about. Who knows? We'll see you then.